Okay, mine still says practice session.
It's just buffering. One moment. Okay. All right, you're now live, Chair Kuznick.
Okay, thank you very much and welcome to the December 7th Planning Commission meeting. We'd like to call the meeting to order at 7:02 p.m. Prior to roll call, the city attorney would like to make an announcement to the Planning Commission regarding teleconferencing of this meeting. So we turn this over to City Attorney Alicia Poon.
Thank you, Chair Kuznick. Prior to roll call, I would like to make clear for the record of this meeting, and it should be reflected in the minutes, that the governor has issued executive orders relaxing the requirements pertaining to remote meetings under the Brown Act. The executive orders authorize this Planning Commission to hold public meetings by teleconference during the COVID-19 crisis. I previously went over the specific provisions of the Brown Act that have been temporarily amended or suspended in order to allow for this meeting to take place by teleconference. And this meeting will comply with all such provisions. Madam Recording Secretary, it would now be appropriate for you to conduct roll call, after which I'd ask the chair to recognize me in order to confirm certain matters for the record. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Planning Commissioner Edwards.
Present.
Commissioner Marks.
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace.
I'm here.
Vice Chair Alper.
Here.
And Chair Kuznick.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, we turn this back over to Ms. Poon.
Thank you again, Chair Kuznick. I would now like to ask the chair, the vice chair, and the other commission members 3 questions. And rather than ask you to respond separately to these questions, I'll ask all 3. And if the answer is yes to all 3, please say yes and physically raise your hand. Question number 1, can you hear me well? Question number 2, have you been able to hear all previous speakers, including the roll call, clearly? And question 3, are you satisfied based on facial or voice recognition or otherwise that everyone here representing themselves to be a commission member is actually the person they are representing themselves to be? I'm looking for hands and yeses, please.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank
Yes.
you. Seeing all hands raised, the record should reflect that I have received affirmative answers from each commission member present to all 3 questions, that all commission members have indicated they're able to hear each other and these proceedings clearly. And no commission member has expressed doubt that each and every commission member participating by teleconference is in fact the commission member they are representing themselves to be. And finally, I would now like to advise the chair and commission members and the recording secretary that any votes taken during the teleconference portion of this meeting must be taken by roll call. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we ask the recording secretary to lead the commission in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. All right, we'll move on to item number 4, public comments or written communications. So Jennifer, you have some directions for the public on how to speak on public comment?
Yes, if you wish to speak under public comment, you may click the raise your hand button on your computer or *9 on your telephone to request to speak when public comment is being taken. At this time, members of the public can address the Planning Commission on any item not already included in tonight's agenda. So I will take a look and see if we have anyone who would like to speak. I don't see any hands raised. Through the chair, if you'd like to close public comment, we can go ahead and do that.
Yes, we will. Thank you very much. I concur that there are no hands raised for this portion of the public comment. Okay.
All right.
All right. Do we, okay, never mind. All right. Item number 5, additions and revisions. We do have an announcement from staff. We'd like to congratulate Shanae, who has announced that he will be moving on, retiring as of December 17th. So congratulations to you, and on behalf of the entire commission, we wish you very well. And
thank you very much.
work well done, and it has been a joy and a pleasure to work with you. So-
It's been my pleasure working for the city and then working with you.
Great, and we will go out strong tonight until the 17th. Very good, excellent.
Thank you.
And through the chair, I'd like to publicly thank Shanae for his 20 years of service to the city. I remember when I hired him many, many years ago, and how he has grown in his in the profession, and the contributions he's made to the city is outstanding. So thank you, Shanae, for your 20 years of service to us. We wish you the best of luck in retirement, and thank you again.
Thank you so much. And by the way, Debbie was in the interview panel when I interviewed for my position way back when.
Very good.
Thank you.
Very good, excellent. Other commissioners, why you have an opportunity?
I'm going to speak. I've known Shanae since 2010 when I became planning commissioner. It's always been a pleasure to work with him. I mercilessly picked his brain for a lot of different things, and I appreciate the time and effort that he put into school me on the finer points of planning. We will miss you. If and when we actually have another city golf tournament, I hope you do show up, if only for the after golf party.
Thank you. I'd like to be invited for that.
Excellent. Anyone else? That's fantastic.
Through the chair, we do have a few hands raised. I don't know if it's pertaining to this item, but if you'd like, we can go ahead and open public comment.
If
All
you
right.
would, Jen, thank you.
But I'm sorry.
All right, through the chair, if you would, please, I'd appreciate that.
Yes, thank you. All right, so let us do that then.
All right.
On this topic only.
Yes. I have two speakers, but I will start at the top here. I have call-in user 1. You're free to speak whenever you would like.
Hi, did I hear that Shanae is retiring?
Yes.
Okay, well, I want to thank him so much. He is like the teacher that I have ever had. When I first started going into these kind of meetings, and planning commission, in my opinion, is the most difficult meeting to follow because there are a lot of vocabularies and plans and, you know, just really confusing things that you guys talk about. And one time I think made a fool of myself in the public comment, and I went to see Shanae the next day, and he miraculously was able to show me what is a master plan and, you know, the background information that I was missing because I've never gone through those 101 classes that you guys offer. So I want to thank Shanae for his amazing ability to teach someone. And I hope that, you know, even in his retirement days, if he has time, that he can, you know, consider continuing to educate our city. And I just want to thank him so much again for teaching me. I will never forget that that interaction with him that day. Thank you so much again.
Thank you.
It's really lovely.
Thank you.
All right.
All right. Let's see. We have Hassan Sharifi. And you are able to speak whenever you're ready. Okay, Hassan, can you hear us? All right. I'm not getting any feedback here. Let's see. I don't have any other speakers in the audience. Perhaps if you'd like to speak later, we can bring him back in.
All right. I think that will be fine.
Okay.
Apologize for not being able to give you the time, and hope that you get your communications working effectively. So we will close public comment on the additions and revisions. So we move on to item number 6, consent calendar. And tonight there are none. So we move on to item 7.1, minutes from the November 16th meeting, approval of the minutes. So do we have a discussion on the minutes and or a motion?
I'll move approval, adoption of the minutes from the November 16th Planning Commission meeting.
All right. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All right, Jennifer?
Thank you. Okay, so we had mover Vice Chair Alper,
Aye.
seconder Commissioner Wallace,
Aye.
Commissioner Edwards.
Aye.
Commissioner Marks
Aye.
and Chair Kuznick.
Aye.
All right, thank you. Item 7.1 passes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Item number 8, continued items after close of public hearing. There are none. Moving on to item 9. Item 9.1, the Windflower Fields 47-unit townhome development presentation presented by Lauren Barr, Planning Manager, and Shinye Tsukamoto, Associate Planner.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to start off with a brief presentation. It's my pleasure to transition this project from Shinye to myself to finish it off, but I'm going to be relying on Shinye for additional background information and analysis as needed. So just in terms of a brief recap, the applicant is requesting approval of development applications for 47 townhomes located at 2701 Hooper Drive. The application is proposing the use of 16 accessory dwelling units to satisfy the affordable housing requirements of the Crow Canyon specific plan. This proposed project is subject to SB 330, which limits the city's ability it limits the number of hearings for the city to 5 public meetings. It also restricts the review to objective standards and sets a standard for a high standard in the case of a denial based on health and safety factors. This is the 4th meeting allowed by SB 330. We had an architectural review board meeting in September, a planning commission meeting in October, another planning commission meeting in November, and then the meeting tonight. At the last meeting on November 2nd, there were still some concerns regarding the use of accessory dwelling units or ADUs to satisfy the affordable housing policy. And then also the applicant had proposed revisions to the conditions of approval. And the commission wanted some additional time to review those, and staff also had the opportunity to go through those. Regarding the affordable housing, the use of ADUs to meet the affordable housing standard, the Crow Canyon specific plan does not distinguish the difference between the townhomes or the primary units in this case and ADUs. They're both considered units. The Crow Canyon specific plan does not include policy direction regarding the use of ADUs or restrictions of the use of ADUs. The inclusionary housing ordinance does include such restrictions. However, it's not in place at this time, or was not in place at the time of the SB 330 application. So as it stands, the proposed 16 ADUs that are income restricted represents 34% of the base units and meets the 25% inclusionary standard of the Crow Canyon specific plan as vested by SB 330. With regard to the revisions proposed by the applicant to the conditions of approval, staff considered the revision request, made some modifications that are shown as red line edits in the resolution that's in your staff report. In addition, staff made some changes to the recitals, findings, and as well as the conditions of approval. Staff also provided additional analysis in the staff report itself related to the guest parking discussion. We wanted to make sure we clarified that the guest parking standard applies to all residents of the project, whether they're residents of the ADU or the townhomes themselves. and that residents are not allowed to use guest parking. So that was one of the points we wanted to emphasize in the response. Regarding the applicant's request for a condition to allow interior doors, staff's position on this is that it's not required. The optional door between the proposed ADU and the townhome does not change the classification of the space as an ADU. Any property owner could pursue modifications that are consistent with building codes, as long as they maintain the standards required for the ADU, consistent with any deed restriction regarding affordability. And so ultimately, having a door between the proposed ADU and the primary townhome unit is really a preference of the property owner. So again, we think we've addressed the primary issues related to both the conditions through the red lines that have been provided, as well as the issues regarding the use of the ADUs. So at this point, staff is going to recommend that the Planning Commission receive the report, comments by the applicant as appropriate, open the public hearing, take public testimony, close public hearing, and if appropriate, adopt resolution 0721 approving the project. And so both Shinye and I are available for questions. And then the applicant's team has been promoted into the meeting, and Brian Winter is present as well. And available for questions.
Okay. So does the applicant wish to make a comment at this point?
Good evening, Chair.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, trying to avoid background noise. Good evening, Chair Kuznick and members of the Planning Commission and city staff. Thank you for the opportunity to speak briefly tonight. I want to recognize city staff for the productive approach that they've taken with us to work through this, which is reflected again in a positive recommendation from staff to the Planning Commission. I also want to separately acknowledge Shinye, who I worked with many times over the years on different projects, and sorry to see him retire. Mr. Sharifi would, if there's an opportunity, like to address that issue, but Shinye has been wonderful, and want to acknowledge Shinye, Lauren, Debbie, Martin, Alicia, city staff for their work with us in connection with this project. But right now, I just want to briefly recognize Shinye in light of the fact that this, I believe, is his last public meeting. We obviously support the staff recommendation that this project be approved, and believe that that's fully consistent with state housing law, including Senate Bill 330, the Housing Accountability Act, and the Density Bonus Law, for reasons that we discussed previously. If necessary, we can get into those details again, but I hope that that's not necessary. The project is in its own right a great project, which I think is also reflected in the fact that there is no public opposition to it. And in addition, it's a project that, when we can show a couple of slides if we need to, that is basically not visible from San Ramon Valley Boulevard or other public vantage points, versus the higher density project that could be accomplished consistent with existing city land use regulations that would be much more visible, much more dense, et cetera. So we believe this is a great project in its own right, in addition to the fact that it's protected and supported by state housing law. I'm happy to answer any questions about any of that, but appreciate your attention this evening. We hope that you will approve this project so that there's no need to go to the city council in connection with it. And again, if there's an opportunity for Mr. Sharifi to speak to Shinye's retirement, that would be wonderful. I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Commissioners, do we have any comments for our applicants? No. All right. So let us open public comment on this item. And Jen has some words of wisdom.
Hi, yes. Just as a reminder for anyone who would like to speak during public comment, you can click the raise your hand button on your computer. or if you're calling in, you can click *9 to request to speak, and you will have 3 minutes to speak on this item. I'm just going to see who we have here. It looks like we have a couple of hands raised, so we will go ahead and Lauren, if you could set me up with a 3-minute timer, if you have that, that'd be great.
See it?
Yep, that's perfect. And I'll go ahead and bring in our first speaker. Call in user 1.
So as a public, I actually amazingly approve of this project, despite the fact that I know all these projects that are lined up in California is going to drain our water resource. However, this particular one I know has been vetted very, very carefully and many, many times. And I think this is a good project, so I would approve this one. I think it fits our community, our quality of life. And however, going forward though, especially I don't know who's going to replace Shanae. And, you know, because Shanae is a very meticulous person. He usually do his background, you know, details very, very carefully. So I think as a public, I can trust him more. And in the future, I don't know who you're going to appoint or hire. In the future, I will be very, very careful on what you approve. But this one, I approve. Thank you.
Thank you. Who I have? It looks like we have a Margie Gear. You can go ahead and speak whenever you're ready.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to the commissioners as well as on this forum. Thank you for introducing me. I would like to just go on record. I think it's important, although I know Senate Bill 330 and other, for other factors, it seems like this is a fait accompli, that there are people who do object to it. And the reason why there's been a large outpouring of sadness, and there aren't many roller rinks left. I know that this one has been around for almost 50 years. And I think it's important somebody speak up and say, you know, this has been great for the kids. It's been great for generations. It's been around for almost half a century, the Golden Skate. There aren't many roller rinks left in Northern California for kids to have, you know, and adults, old kids like myself, to have a forum, to have a wholesome place to skate. And there's such a community at the Golden Skate. There's so much sadness. I know people in their 70s and 80s who are competing professionally with RSA, the Roller Skating Association. And it's really, there is a whole lot of grief right now. So I just want to go out there. I do want to say on the record that not everybody approves of it, and it's a travesty that this is being, you know, it's like was once said in a song from about the time that this roller rink was built, you know, they paved paradise and put up a parking lot. I think that's what's happening here. It's not, progress is not exactly a happy situation here. So that's all I have to say. I just wanted to go on record. Thank you. And thank you for giving me this time.
Thanks, Margie. All right, it looks like we have gone through all of our speakers for this item. Okay, through the chair, we could go ahead and close public comment.
We will close public comment. I heard a voice.
We also have written communication as well.
That was going to be my next item.
Yes, thank you. All right. Yes, okay, so we did receive one written late communication item. This is from Dylan Casey of the California Renters Legal Advocacy and Education Fund. And he provided a document written in favor of the project in urging approval of the development.
Yes, thank you
And
very much.
this was provided to commissioners prior to tonight's meeting.
That is correct. Thank you. And I saw it. I trust my fellow commissioners have also. All right, so we are officially closed on public comment.
Through the chair, if I may I have a motion to close the public hearing with a
Okay.
formal vote?
All right,
Yep.
is there a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll move to close the public hearing.
I'll second.
Thank you. I'll do a quick roll call vote. We had mover, Vice Chair Alpert,
Aye.
and seconder, I believe, was Commissioner Marks.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Edwards.
I abstain.
Okay. And Commissioner Wallace
Aye.
and Chair Kuznick.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right. So at this point, commissioners, this is an opportunity for discussion before we consider the resolution. So comments, thoughts? All right, Commissioner Marks.
Madam Chair, I have some comments that are somewhat extensive. I think you should put me at the end of the train here so
Okay.
that anybody else who wants to speak should go ahead of me. But I do want to say something.
Thank you. All right. Commissioner Wallace, comments? Discussion item.
Well, I was hoping that Commissioner Marks should cover everything I wanted to say, but since he's going to the back of the line, I guess I'll have to start out. The project is filed consists of 47 for-sale townhomes. Under the Crow Canyon specific plan, 15% minimum have to be set aside for affordable housing with a 10% in lieu fee paid if only 15% is affordable. The term units in the Crow Canyon specific plan is clear, and all the documents that are provided by the applicant show that it understood the term unit to mean the 47 townhomes. Now, since the application was filed, there's sort of been a morphing as to what the project is. And there's language that suggests, well, the project is really a hybrid. It's 47 townhomes for sale and 16 ADUs for rent. But if you accept that as what the project really is, as opposed to what it was filed as, that still has a problem because none of the 47 townhomes are being offered as affordable units. Now, the 16 ADUs meet the requirement because all of them are affordable, but that still leaves the 47 townhomes without providing any affordable housing as required by the Crow Canyon specific plan. While the ADUs may count as housing units under RENA, that's not the issue before us. They don't count as units under the Crow Canyon specific plan because the ADUs are not, unlike the townhomes, offered for sale. Because the ADUs do not qualify as affordable units under the Crow Canyon specific plan, in my view, this project does not meet the objective standards of the Crow Canyon specific plan. And as I understand it, the city attorney agrees that the language in the Crow Canyon specific plan setting forth a numerical quantity of affordable units is an objective standard, even under the Housing Accountability Act. The problem here is that although the applicant was told in writing that the ADUs did not qualify as affordable units under the Crow Canyon specific plan before the application was deemed complete, and was told orally that several times thereafter. No one thought to write a letter to the applicant within that 30 days after the application was deemed complete, reiterating a fact that the applicant was well aware of. Now, the applicant has argued that the failure to repeat what it already knew and had been told by the city on multiple occasions was basically a forfeiture of the city's right to raise the non-compliance with the affordable housing requirements of the Crow Canyon specific plan as grounds to deny the project. Now, the Housing Accountability Act does contain language that says that if an applicant for a covered housing project, like the present one is, does not receive written notice of non-compliance with the city standards within 30 days of the date the application is deemed complete, then the project is, by operation of law, deemed to have complied with all applicable standards. As I understand it, the city attorney feels that for the city to convince a court otherwise would be an uphill struggle. I'm a little bit less sanguine than the city attorney is on this, because the record shows the applicant knew the problem with this application well before the project was deemed complete and thereafter, and yet sort of sat back and let the clock run out on the notice that it knew what it would say. Now, it may be as a matter of law, the way the Housing Accountability Act is correct, that running out the clock is appropriate, and maybe a judge would overlook the spirit of the Housing Accountability Act, which is basically to require the applicant to be given clear notice of noncompliance with city standards when the application is pending, and that clearly has been done here. But the fact of the matter remains that literally under the HAA, written notice as required was not given to the applicant, at least as far as I've seen the record. And I haven't been given access to the entire file, so I'm relying on the staff report that sets forth the written communications between the applicant and the city. Now, at this point, it seems to me that we have a problem that needs to be addressed, not necessarily in the context of this hearing, but shortly thereafter, because as we know, we have received and will continue to receive applications and concept reviews for housing in the city, some of which will probably fall within the bounds of SB 330. The problem is the timing required to notify an applicant of the non-compliance with city standards once the application has had all its boxes checked as being complete. And that's a 30-day period, and I am not aware that there is an opportunity for the sides to agree to extend that period of time. If that's the case, and my view is that it probably is, then I think the following should happen. First, the commission should be given notice of the fact that an application that may fall within SB 330 has been submitted to the city. Second, if the project is deemed complete, the commission should be given notice of that fact, contemporaneous of that provided to the applicant. Third, that a hearing be set before the planning commission no later than 20 days after the date the project is deemed complete, so that the planning commission may consider whether the project as written meets city standards in order to preserve the city's rights to deny a non-compliant project. If this planning commission does not do that, then essentially staff will be setting the standards for whether the project is compliant, and the commission will be unable to make an independent decision on that point. The project in question does provide housing in the city. It is my view that it did not provide the amount of affordable housing that was intended by the Crow Canyon specific plan, even in its original incarnation. However, given the facts that I've stated, and that if we should deny the application on this basis, that an appeal to the city council will likely be filed, and it is quite possible that the city council will follow the advice of the city attorney and approve the project. I'm regretfully prepared to, assuming we can agree on acceptable conditions of approval, to hold my nose and vote to approve this project, inasmuch as to me is the lack of truly affordable units seems to me the only basis upon which the project should be denied.
Thank you, Commissioner Wallace. Commissioner Albert, Commissioner Edwards.
I can go.
Thank you.
I also will be voting yes on this project, but I also have a few things to say before I do. This is not a good project. I will vote yes because under state law, I don't think we have a choice. Yes, the project meets all state laws and is consistent with the outdated and now replaced Crow Canyon specific plan. Everyone that worked on that plan knew it was obsolete and needed to be revised. We attempted to remove housing from the isolated industrial corner of the plan area, but were unsuccessful due to state law. As written in the staff report, it is not easy or even possible to deny this project without putting the city in grave jeopardy. If we were to deny this project, we'd need to identify significant, quantifiable, direct, and unavoidable impacts based on objective, identified, written public health or safety standards, policies, or conditions as they existed on the day of the application was deemed complete. And as we've all learned, that is not a very easy thing to do. I'd also like to add that I don't think San Ramon is the kind of city that these housing laws were designed to address. The city knows how to approve housing projects. We have done so repeatedly. We approved thousands of housing units over the years, including 4,500 at Citywalk, 400 plus at City Village, 169 at the corner of Deerwood and San Ramon, 95 units in South San Ramon, 43 on the western edge of the city. That these are not yet under construction or complete is not under the control of the city or this commission. As I said, we do approve good projects. I was actually considering voting no on this project just to attempt to lobby this to be moved to the city council. But in the end, I felt that that would not be fulfilling the job that I signed up for. We all took an oath to follow the law, and the law says we must approve this. To knowingly vote no without valid reasons would be irresponsible in putting the city of San Ramon in jeopardy. But before we cast our vote, I want to share why I don't think this is a good project. This project does not meet the true housing needs of San Ramon. On paper, I understand that the condominiums and the junior ADUs, really 260 square foot bedrooms with a bathroom and a kitchen, count as a housing unit. They even count towards meeting our affordable housing numbers. According to state law, that is a fact. I'm not sure that we will ever see any of these rented in the true nature that addresses the affordable housing crisis that faces San Ramon. And if any one of the future homeowners chooses to rent, I question the quality of the neighborhood that we are approving tonight. There's no parking available for the junior ADUs per state law, and anybody that rents there and has a car is going to need to park down the road on Hooper or Omega, an industrial street that is vacant and dark at night. I would not want my daughter living in one of these and having to walk home in the dark. But we don't have to have parking according to state law because there's a bus stop nearby. And I walked from that bus stop on San Ramon Valley. I crossed that street in the dark, dodging cars as I went through the crosswalk. Then I walked up past a closed Carpet One, across the street from a closed auto parts store and paint store. Then I passed by the Carpet One loading dock, also dark, until I reached the property. Again, we're not building a good neighborhood. And lastly, like Commissioner Wallace, I think this should serve as a call to action for all of us, commissioners and staff alike. The city of San Ramon is currently updating the general plan, housing element, and related documents to meet the current RHNA numbers. I hope that we will all consider what we approve tonight and make sure that we do everything we possibly can as we update these important documents so in the future, we will be allowed to make good decisions in the future, good decisions for all of San Ramon. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the chance to offer my comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Alpert. Commissioner Edwards.
I've got some brief comments that I'd be happy to present. The proponents of this development are arguing that this project should receive expedited planning review based on the recent housing legislation and concessions under the density bonus law. The project's entitlement to those benefits is premised on the claim that this project satisfies the affordable housing requirements imposed by the Crow Canyon specific plan. Specifically, it's this claim that there's 16 accessory dwelling units that are being developed. That claim is false. And we need to look no further than page A5.0.3 of the plan set, which identifies the alleged ADU as a fourth bedroom. The square footage that they're claiming is affordable is not a separate dwelling unit. It is intended to be a bedroom. What we have here is a gross manipulation of state housing legislation and an effort to undermine the integrity of this commission and our city's planning process. By falsely characterizing the fourth bedroom as an ADU, the product sponsor wants to receive all the benefits that come from delivering a product with 34% affordability, yet this project will provide not one single unit of affordable housing. I did take a look through the resolution that's been presented for our consideration and find that it includes, it includes a number of statements about the project that are frankly false, including the statement that the project is developing 16 below market units. I cannot in good conscience adopt those false statements. I do want to take a moment to respond to the letter that we received from the California Renters Legal Advocacy and Education Fund and make clear that the concerns that have been expressed by this commission are in no way anti-development. From the outset, our concerns have been that this project delivers the bare minimum number of units for the project site and no affordable housing. It is not consistent with the city's planning documents, and it is not consistent with state law. I would like very much to see this site developed. I invite the project sponsor to put forward a project that complies with San Ramon's planning documents and California law, and I hope that the project sponsor will do that irrespective of the outcome of tonight's hearing.
Thank you, Commissioner Edwards. I know Commissioner Marks, you want to go last, so I will add very brief comments if you would like to
It's your
round us
choice.
out.
It's your choice. You're running the meeting, not me.
All right, so go ahead, because what I have to say post the four of you will be exceedingly brief.
That's fine. Let me say, first of all, not being an attorney, I'm not addressing the legal issues, though my gut tells me that both of our planning commissioner attorneys are right. For me, this too is a difficult overall project to approve for reasons that I want to state, but in the end, for reasons that have been stated by Commissioner Alpert, I will probably vote to approve it. I believe that badly conceived laws by the state legislature and signed by the governor are forcing local planning staffs, including our own planning commissions and city councils, to recommend and approve proposed housing developments, irrespective of careful site analysis, potential threats to development's residents, or damage to existing neighborhoods. In my view, this is a residential development on a property that is not a residential development and includes a flawed workforce housing plan that, minus those state laws, should have been rejected months ago. As public officials, on the other hand, we take an oath to, among other things, follow state laws, whether we agree with them or not. And as several state laws apply to this development, I find those applicable laws to again be badly conceived with a one-size-fits-all approach to every site that potentially could host housing. I will vote for the project, having seen as recently as the last several years with our federal government and in various state governments, what happens when public officials stop following duly adopted laws and dismiss the guardrails of democracy and simply make it up as they go along. But irrespective of my vote, I'd like the public record to include what I believe are the problems with this proposed housing development that is mandated by law and will not be the product of good city planning practice or good judgment. Let me address the plan first. The subject site was included in the Crow Canyon specific plan adopted in 2006 as a housing overlay site, which appeared to be a catch-all designation for a number of secondary locations for housing, and likely a political compromise to bring all participants in the planning process on board. When the Crow Canyon specific plan was amended in 2020 and the name was changed to the San Ramon Village specific plan, after a long review and amendment process, the Golden Skate site was, along with other sites in the plan area, designated in 06 as housing overlay, intentionally not included as a housing site. But via filing technicality, the property owner filed the subject applications barely in time to be eligible to be processed under the rules of the 2006 plan, and is now subject to development options that the Planning Commission and City Council had thought they had eliminated in 2020. Given the enactment of several well-intended but badly thought out state laws, the characteristics of a site and its location are apparently not important to the state legislature and governor. All that matters is increasing the city's housing count. RHNA numbers, that's it. Increase the number of housing units despite what might not be good reasons. To do so. Apparently, we no longer should care about building intelligent and safe neighborhoods. We should just simply increase the number of housing units in a city. In 2020, I did not believe the Golden Gate site was suitable for housing, and I still don't. The property is an isolated property surrounded by retail, commercial, industrial, storage, and other business land uses, and will not be near other housing sites or the overall residential community intended by the city. And if it feels isolated by day, try walking it at night. After planning and locating actual housing units for the site, its location at the top of Hooper Drive Hill offers little room for recreational space for children and no safe on-street play at all. As an example, if kids try to throw or kick a ball and miss it, it will soon end up on San Ramon Valley Boulevard. People will not be living in a neighborhood. They will be living in a single isolated housing development. As part of my review of the applicant's proposal, I've driven the area a number of times during the day, and more importantly, I too have walked the area at night when it is very dark. Several days ago at 7:30 p.m., I parked my car on Hooper Drive and walked to the crosswalk at the intersection of San Ramon Valley Boulevard and Hooper Drive. The crosswalk at this location is not ground lit, and there is no traffic signal supporting the crosswalk on this segment of the street. I crossed the street to get to the bus stop that, according to the legislature, makes it okay to exempt developers from providing parking for future residents of new developments who may live in accessory dwelling units that are a part of a development and help to meet its workforce housing legal obligations. Interestingly, the laws that now govern housing development applications dismiss the need for safe parking for low and moderate income residents who will live in the proposed accessory dwelling units and do not have set standards for how often bus service must be available at a nearby bus stop. The only requirement that the bus stop be within a certain distance of the new development. I then recrossed the street as vehicles were coming from Danville toward San Ramon to see whether drivers at night appeared to see me and slow down. They did not. I then walked up Hooper Drive. With only a few not very bright street lights, it was dark. Not totally, but enough to make me ask myself, as I guess Commissioner Alpert did, would I be comfortable if a member of my family lived in the proposed units and had to walk up the street at night in the dark? Would they feel safe? Would I think they were safe? Would they be safe? I continued walking past the Golden Skate site, past the elbow in the street where it then becomes Omega Road, almost to the shopping center. This area too has few street lights and at best is pretty gloomy. The only real area lighting came from a business that happened to be open but would close later on. Hooper Drive and Omega Road is where residents of the 16 ADUs proposed for this development will be required to park their cars. And on that night, there were, and in the future, there will likely be other cars parked at night in this area. Some may be overnight, some directly across from the Golden Skate property, which would provide the on-street parking closest to where people in the ADUs will live. The parking locations that ADU residents will find won't necessarily be close to their living space, and they will park and walk along dark streets, whatever the weather conditions. The last thing I will talk about is the proposed ADUs. While I do not think a 260 square foot living space for one or two people is nearly sufficient, I think it sends a poor message to the community about how we are supposed to value people, including and particularly low and moderate income people. But for a public policy point of view, here are several aspects of the ADU law as explained to the Planning Commission that, in my opinion, render it a farce. In theory, once the units are approved, deed restricted, and ready for occupancy, they can only be rented within specified rental limits to income qualified people needing a place to live. But there is apparently no real requirement that the units actually be rented as affordable housing to an income qualified person or couple. The owner of the main unit to which the ADU is appended can use the space as a bedroom for a family member, or as an office space, or possibly even rent it out as an office space. There is no intent or apparently any obligation to monitor how the ADUs are actually used, who is using them and for what purpose. There is no intent or obligation to monitor the actual rental fee that might actually be charged to a person who is actually renting the unit for the purposes intended by the state or the city. Apparently, again, so long as the city can count the ADUs approved against the city's RENA obligations, that is all that is important to the state legislature and governor. So in closing, it seems apparent that if and when we vote on this proposed housing development, and if it is approved, we really can't be sure we have created real and long-term workforce housing opportunities that are truly desperately needed in this area. All we will have done is very slightly increase the number of residential units that can be credited toward meeting the city's RENA numbers. And so again, I thank you, Madam Chair, and apologize for how long I spoke, but I truly believe that this whole process is one that is not about good city planning. It is not about affordable housing. It is about a legislature and governor wanting to feel like they are doing something when they have in fact overlooked the details that will either make it safe or that will make it work.
Thank you, Commissioner Marks. My comments are certainly in the same vein as my fellow commissioners. I'm going to take a slightly different tact and say to the property owner, Mr. Sharifi, who I've met at when we were meeting in person, and I thought him to be a very devoted business owner in the city of San Ramon, who is very committed to creating Golden Skate as a viable business, and now is turning this over into housing. I'm disappointed because for years he has been a very responsible member of the community in this business. And I think when this is built, and I suspect it will be a disappointment to so many people. I agree with my fellow commissioners that, and I've said this in other meetings, I have little hope that any single one of these ADUs will actually ever hit the rental market. The fact that they can be rented at different income levels presents a different problem. If I am a homeowner, the townhouse owner, why would I buy the unit in which the rent is going to be deed restricted to the very lowest level? We could have, I hoped, included a caveat that would require all 16 ADUs to be rented at only the very low income. So at least have some glimmer of this being truly affordable. But again, we apparently cannot do that. And again, I'm just gravely disappointed in this project. At every turn, as commissioners, our hands have been tied, and by people who seem to have taken a different tact. I'll be polite. If you are a homeowner of these townhouses and you have a 55-year deed restriction on the rental of this, why would you bother? You're not compelled, and to all the other points that have come forward about concerns of these ADUs, it just is not going to happen. And so I think we are going to end up being on record of having to approve these when we are also on record saying that what I've heard was 5 people who disapprove this. But again, I want to acknowledge that we are limited in what we can do. I am seriously concerned that people who build these townhouses have found a workaround what the law did intend, and that I will just shake my head in disbelief, but I suspect there will be many more of this attempt to put in a ground level ADU and call it a day. And that is certainly not the intent of affordable housing. It certainly isn't the intent for the city of San Ramon in the Inclusionary Housing Act. And what we had intended And I will say also that this commission has recently approved a 57 unit up on Deerwood that was on 3.5 acres. And they have affordable housing that is consistent with what the other townhouses are being built. So this was not a question of it couldn't be done. This was a question of they wouldn't do it. And I find that really troubling and again, very disappointing. And those are my comments on this as the chair. So at this point, we can see if there is a motion to adopt this resolution, or if the commissioners need to clarify anything in the resolution.
I would propose that we go through the resolution, because I suspect there's a few of us who have issues with some of the language in the resolution and the conditions of approval.
Thank you, Commissioner Wallace. I will be happy to do that. And please, commissioners, feel free to chime in as you come across items. So let us start on packet page 14 then. As we are going, I believe that those are pretty much the history of the project. Okay.
I have a comment on the third whereas. The language on the second line, quote, meaning that the subject applications remain subject to the provisions of the, I think, Crow Canyon specific plan, close quote. I think that's unnecessary. I think all we need to do is to say that the applications were filed. On the fourth line down, that starts out, quote, including, I think that the appropriate language is including 47 unit for sale town homes that included 7 260 square foot junior accessory dwelling units. That is actually more in keeping with what the application said.
Through the chair, I'll comment on the third whereas. At that point, we're trying to acknowledge that the project was vested under the 2016-17 Crow Canyon plan and not the newer one that was recently adopted. So that's important to maintain the acknowledgement that which Crow Canyon specific plan this project is vested under.
Commissioner Wallace, are you good with that?
Yeah, I know what Ms. Chamberlain is saying. I would probably say instead of meaning, and that the application remain there. I find some of the language in the resolution to be less than factual, but actually argumentative, starting with that one. But you know, I can live with this particular one.
Okay. Other items on this page? Okay. All right, packet page 15.
On the second whereas paragraph,
okay.
Notwithstanding Mr. Winter's presence, I don't know that the third line referring to a letter from Miller Star is really necessary to put in there any more than detailing anything else that was submitted to the commission was. I think it's covered under other pertinent documents.
Okay. Staff, are we good on suggesting that that part is stricken?
All right, I got two computers going tonight. Let me take a look.
It's the third line.
Yes, no, I see it. I believe it's important because it does assert our concerns regarding the 16 ADUs. So it's more just the whereas are more of a historical reference to kind of the tell the tape, explain the history of the project. So it's up to the commission, but it is part of the record. So there's, leaving it in, I believe does no harm, but I'll leave that to to Alicia to confirm that. But it's really just a record of the tape as to what's been discussed with the commission over this process.
I would also add that in doing future research on the history of this, it flags future planners about a letter on October 5th from Miller Star. So it's one way that we track down information in outgoing years.
Somehow I don't think you'll need that to remember the letter.
Well, it is factual, so I think you can keep it.
All right. Okay. All right, anything else on this page?
Well, there is a typo on the fourth whereas from the bottom, the third line where it says, but the policy was implemented.
Yeah,
I think
through.
you meant through rather than trough.
We got that one. Thank you.
Yep.
We got it already. Thank you.
Got my red pen too.
It was,
Okay.
you got to find something, right?
Gary's usually the one who catches all those.
He
Okay.
did actually.
Oh, he did. Okay, there we go. Nice. Okay. All right, let us go to packet page 16.
Oh, all right.
Okay, the first full whereas,
Mhm.
I don't see the need to have that in there at all. If the ADUs are compliant with state law, I don't think you need to put in a puff piece that says that the city is required to promote the creation of ADUs. That's one of these argumentative paragraphs that I think has no place in this resolution.
Well, under state law, ADUs are a form of affordable housing, and they do meet arena allocations. So a new state law coming into effect in January 1 is going to make it very difficult. So I'll leave that to the commission's discretion, but just to provide that for content.
Well, I'm not denying the interpretation of state law. I'm saying that for purposes of a resolution approving this project, I think that paragraph is unnecessary.
Other legal minds in our commission here, thoughts?
I tend to agree.
That is unnecessary.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well.
Right, it seems
Right.
like all right, we're going to suggest that that is omitted. Okay. All right, anything else on page 16? Yes.
The under the regarding development plan, again, question whether paragraph 1B is necessary. It seems to me that's overkill. And in fact of the matter is that some of us, including myself, don't agree with what's written there. I don't, as I said, I don't think that this project meets the requirements of the Crow Canyon specific plan. I think that we're probably precluded from saying so, but I don't know that we're required to affirmatively state that the project is consistent with the plan as set forth in that paragraph.
So Commissioner Wallace, you're speaking to now, therefore be it resolved, section 1 regarding the development plan and the discussion of the compliance with the Crow Canyon plan regarding the ADUs, is that correct?
Yes, I think 1B is really superfluous given 1F covers the same subject, which is on page 17, excuse me.
I got you. I got it. I hear. Yes. I'm just.
All right. Are we okay with omitting that in lieu of paragraph F?
Yes.
Thank you.
So are we deleting paragraph F or paragraph B?
B,
B.
All right, thank you.
Mhm. Commissioner Wallace, anything else on page 16?
no, I'm ready to go on.
Okay, 17.
Under category 2, subparagraph A,
Okay.
I think that's unnecessary because it appears to me that the language in subparagraph E covers the same subject, which is the justification for the waiver and concessions for the project which turns out to be for the setbacks. So I think that 2A can and should come out.
I would agree with you on that one. All right. Anything else? Page 17. What do you got, Eric?
Chair, I would, it's up to, it's the discretion of the commission, of course, but I would, the question is, it comes back to the commission's discretion as to what a unit is. So if the commission feels that the definition of unit in the Crow Canyon plan has been well defined, then okay, but I believe an ADU and a townhome are a unit. So I think it's more of a definition clarification than anything else. But it is the commission's resolution and findings to consider, so. And Alicia, do you
Is
make
the,
comment on
is the
that?
commission saying that E is the same as 2A, 2E is the same as 2A? Because I think they're different. We're touching upon different things.
Well, it seemed to me that the purpose was the heading is regarding the density bonus. And it seemed to me that the purpose of portions of this was to justify the use of the 2 concessions and the waiver because of the 16 ADUs, which is covered in subparagraph E. I don't know that 2A is necessary because of that. Also, I think it's a little bit misleading because the way that I read the Crow Canyon specific plan as applied to this project is that the units are the townhomes, not the ADUs. I mean, I understand that they get a density bonus with the 2 concessions and the waiver because of the 16% market, below market rate ADUs, but it seems to me that's all we have to say to justify giving them the concessions and waiver.
And staff can add on to but I think the distinction staff is trying to make is that for density bonus, it's deed restricted for 55 years. So I think that's why the deed restricted language needs to be there in that section because it's related to density bonus.
Okay, I can see your point on that one. Are you okay with leaving that in, Eric?
Well, it wouldn't ruin my day. So.
It does just, it does demonstrate the deed restriction to meet the affordability requirement. So thank you.
Okay. 18. Anything else on 17? 18. Okay. All right. Not seeing any comments. We're going to page 19.
I had a comment on the second paragraph, which is project compliance. This has to do with the community centers and the purported projected increase in population of San Ramon vis-a-vis the community center metric. It seems to me that the second sentence ought to be ended after the number 183. I think the paren, which estimate is conservative, in that the ADUs may have fewer members per household than the citywide average given their relatively smaller living area, close quote, is unnecessary. The operative fact is that the increase of 183 people will not cause a problem with our performance standard for the community centers. This is one of these argumentative paragraphs that I object to. It's unnecessary.
So through the chair, maybe we can just rephrase that to the 183 people will not have an impact on the provision of providing community centers or something to that effect.
I think you can take out the whole section that I talked about, because you said, here's the increase in people. Then you talk about the floor area of the community centers, the number of people, and it shows by math that increasing the population of 183 people is not going to impact negatively our metric for community centers. I think you just need to state the fact, don't have to have a commentary on it.
Yes, Dr. 183 does not affect the impact on community centers.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm hoping Lauren's writing all this down for me.
Again, I just want to be clear on, you want to add the comment that does not impact community centers after 183, or do we just want to rely on the statement in the last sentence that it does not result in an increased need for community centers?
If you're asking me, you put a period after 183, then the next sentence starts out, currently the total floor area. And that's the way you just take out that whole clause.
I would perhaps we could include the very last sentence, which says after the 183 period. As such, the proposed project does not result in an increased need for the community center.
I would just suggest that the because part is all part of the currently, and just leave that in there. You know, you're explaining why you're not exceeding city standards by the 183. So if I understand Commissioner Wallace, 183 period, then it starts with currently the total floor.
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay. Oh, okay.
And so could I add persons after 183 so we don't end a sentence on a number, just to be grammatically correct?
Oh.
Residents. Residents.
Yes.
For the school teacher in the audience.
Okay.
Okay, so 183 persons, period, delete the red line.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Thank
Got
you,
it.
Lauren.
Thank you. All right. How we doing? Anything else on page 19? All right, go on to page 20.
Okay, in the first paragraph, we have that paragraph about conservative estimates that we just spent 5 minutes talking about on the prior page. And I would take out what's in parens.
Okay. So again, 183
Persons.
persons.
Okay.
I was going to call them residents, but
Residents fine, Chair Kuznick, just being the school teacher in the group, just
you're fine. You're fine.
Residents
help you.
and persons.
You are, not you.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Anything else on page 20? Okay, page 21. Oh. Page 21. Oh, it's the end of the resolution. Okay. Looks good. Got that resolved. Do we need to go through the conditions of approval?
Sorry, is that a question?
Yes, it is.
The answer is yes.
Okay. All right, let's go. Let's do it.
How about we start with numbers as opposed to pages?
We will certainly make this user-friendly for you, staff. Thank you. All right, conditions of approval, Exhibit A. All right, Planning Services Division. We have 1, 2, and 3 comments.
I actually had a question, and it was sort of spurred by a comment that Commissioner Alpert made. Under our current city rules, is there any requirements that a person renting an ADU or a below market rate unit filing reports with the city stating that they are so renting and at what level they're renting it at?
There, as part of the affordable housing agreement, there is a monitoring program that will be in place for this. So that'll be, it's a separate document that spells out the requirements for reporting and the like.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, Madam Chair,
Yes.
about what Lauren said, because that's not what I understood was told to the commission at a previous meeting.
Okay.
Who will do the monitoring? How often? And what is the information that will be monitored?
It's basically a self-certification program. The question is the unit being rented or not? And if it is, then we will require documentation. Whether we do it through staff or through a third party, it'll be subject to the agreement itself.
And will that information include the rental amount charged per month?
It has to be consistent with the deed restrictions on the ADU. So yes, it'll be limited in terms of the ability to rent or it has to be rented at the level that is associated with the unit.
And how frequently will this information be required?
Well, typically it's an annual program that
Are we doing it right now? I mean, right now the city is monitoring.
We're doing it in different ways. We have House Keys is monitoring some of our programs. And then out in Doherty Valley, the county is responsible for monitoring at this point.
Thank you.
All right.
I had a question that was just spawned by this discussion. The 55-year deed restriction, does that reset when a unit townhome is sold, or is it 55 years because it's a rental only? How is it treated under the current ordinance or Crow Canyon Civic Plan ordinance?
That's a good question. My gut reaction is that it probably would not reset because it's not associated with the primary unit. It's a secondary obligation, but I would probably need to research that a little bit if that's something we could include in the affordable housing agreement. I don't know if the city attorney has a thought on that. I know we've gone toward that model for a couple of the projects that we've had, the unit that was purchased, St. James. But again, I'm not sure exactly how that will play out until we get into the agreements.
Okay.
My understanding is I don't know if the rentals reset because we haven't had a lot of affordable rentals in the city, at least under our affordable unit count, and we've been doing for sale mostly. So because of the inclusionary housing ordinance allows for resetting, but prior agreements did not. So I just wanted to add that distinction, that there's a change based on the ordinance. So going forward, I think as projects are subject to the ordinance, they will be restricted to reset if and be transferred to an affordable household.
My recollection of, I'm sorry, through the chair, my recollection of the Summit project is those units were deed restricted, the second units only, for a specific amount of time. And then that deed restriction, once expired, the units that were available for rental at a market rate. So apparently at this point in time, that does not, we have seen with the St. James place, when we purchased the unit and on the resale, it will reset every year. But in the case of the ADUs, for my recollection for Summit Ranch, and then for as we've discussed here, the time will expire and the unit will become available for market rent in 55 years, I think is the deed restriction that's being proposed now.
Thank you.
Good. Excellent. All right, moving on to condition of approval 4 through 10. Any adjustments? I think those are, we went through this somewhat last time. Okay. Conditions of approval 11 through 18. All right, seeing no objections. 19 through 24. Okay. All right, let's see, 24D through N and I did have a question on item number H, where it says trash cans shall be stored in the designated garage spaces. If you are renting the ADU, where do you put your garbage? Just wondered.
Well, so there's a couple possibilities there, and you know, I don't know if the applicant has an answer, but typically either they would be allowed to use the main trash service for the home, or they could, under the terms of the rental agreement, they could have their own trash service, in which case we would need an approved trash location. And so that's something that will have to be dealt with through the rental agreement between the owner of the townhome and the ADU. But my guess is they'll utilize the trash service that's already being provided. Same with utilities.
The utilities are a little bit cleaner, you know, but garbage, no pun intended, garbage is not as clean. Okay, just wondering. All right. Anything else in for D through N? All right, 25 A and B. Seeing none. 25 C and D, 26 and 27.
I have a comment on 27. I think the first clause ought to be taken out. I do not understand the purpose of raising a red flag that says, quote, notwithstanding the state law as it pertains to ADUs, close quote.
Okay. Is there consensus on that?
Yeah.
Well, I guess the only question would be, I think this topic came up last time as part of a legal issue. So,
Okay.
Alicia, do you need to weigh in on this part? That was my recollection from the last meeting.
Yeah, I think it's okay to take that out only because it's the requirement's universal to anybody who's a resident, and we're not making any distinction between the ADU and those who own them.
Okay.
Main unit.
Right. Thank you.
Mhm.
So we'll you got that one, Lauren?
Yep.
We're striking that. Okay. 28, 29 through 34. All right, seeing none. On to 35 through 44. This again looks pretty much no red lines in this one, so it seems to be consistent. All right. Moving to the next section, which would be the remainder of 44 through 50. Okay. Which gets us down to, I will say.
I'm sorry. Number 48, I think there might be a misplaced open paren around the 65%, you know, or I'm not sure. It's 48 says 50% space, 65%. Yeah.
Oh, we'll take a look at that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yes. All right. And I will say that if we delete item number 51, that the whole rest of the numberings have to be adjusted.
That's correct. Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
It will automatically do it. It's the
Oh, good.
PDF,
Oh, fantastic. Okay.
PDF
Thank you.
process.
All right. Moving on to items 54 through 60. Okay, seems pretty straightforward. Okay. Items 61 through 65. I think those are pretty straightforward, standard conditions of approval. 66 to 74. Seeing none. 75 through 83. Good. Okay. Item number 84 and 85. We've stricken 85. So we're at 84. All right. Okay. I see Mr. Winter has raised his hand. So staff, are we allowed to have the applicant weigh in on this? Since we've closed public comment.
You may allow it through the chair. If it's to the regarding the conditions, I suppose, if they want to comment.
Mr. Winter?
Sorry, Chair Kuznick, we didn't have a chance to provide any rebuttal, so I wanted to take a brief moment. The legislature recognizes that we have a housing supply crisis, and the HAA reflects that. The HAA is not predicated on affordability. There is a provision in the HAA that provides protections for affordable housing projects, but the heart of the HAA, the original heart of the law that existed in 1982, is not predicated on affordable housing, and that is the law that 99% of all projects relying on the HAA rely on. It's not predicated on affordable housing, and to the extent that we have an affordable housing issue in California, it is as a result of the supply crisis that subsumes the affordability issues. And so the legislature recognizes that. And I would just want to be clear that this project, again, is protected by subsection J of the HAA, which is predicated on compliance with applicable objective planning, zoning, and subdivision standards and criteria, not on affordability. And with respect to the conditions of approval, I wanted to make one brief comment with respect to number 27, which was on 28 of your packet, that was prefaced with respect to notwithstanding state law. I actually believe that that should say subject to state law as it pertains to ADUs. And I don't think that sentence should be stricken, and I don't think it should remain as it reads. It should say subject to state law, because state law does prohibit the applicability of parking standards to affordable housing units that are within proximity to transit in the way that this project is. So it should say subject to state law. With that, I have no other comments.
Staff, can you, can we hear from Ms. Poon on that one?
Sure.
I mean, we can leave subject to state law, but state law doesn't say anything about guest parking. So it's kind of irrelevant as to the rest of the text, because it's about the requirement for guest parking, and that the ADUs are not free to just park in guest parking just like any other resident. So.
Well, I would add too that this entire project, including the conditions of approval, is subject to state law. So sticking that in there is superfluous.
Okay. All right. I'm going to.
If that was a question, I could not hear that.
The question, Ms. Poon said that she thought that it was not necessary to have that statement in there as our city attorney. Okay.
Well,
right.
I think state law broadly speaks to this issue, and it's not distinguishing between resident parking and guest parking. The law applies the same way. It's broadly written. And so I believe it should say subject to state law as it pertains to ADUs, and it shouldn't read any other way.
That's why I think it should be taken out. The fact that it's subject to state law is a given in any contract, in any project. So saying it's subject to state law is kind of duplicative. either what follows it is enforceable or not. Whether you call it subject to state law, notwithstanding state law, is irrelevant.
State law only, as it pertains to ADUs, doesn't is the requirement to require parking for ADUs is not allowed, and we're not talking about that at all in this condition.
I'm going to suggest that we stick with what we agreed to, which is to strike that comment, and wiser minds can deal with it in some other manner. All right, so at this point, is there a motion concerning the resolution and the draft and the conditions of approval?
All right, so somebody's going to make a motion, either vote up or vote down, but silence is
know.
not an option.
I think what you're seeing is our general. Well, I won't read into other people's thinking.
So that we can go home tonight, I'll go ahead and move to adopt resolution number 0721, resolution of the Planning Commission, City of San Ramon, approving development plan, major subdivision for Windflower Town's home at 2701 Hooper Drive.
Is there a second?
We'll have a vote. I'll second it.
All right. Jennifer.
All right, guys, thank you. We had mover, Vice Chair Alpert.
Yes.
Seconder, Commissioner Wallace.
Regretfully, aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Edwards.
I abstain from this vote.
Commissioner Marks.
Aye.
And we have Chair Kuznick.
Regretfully, yes.
All right. Thank you all. Resolution number 07-21 passes.
Through the chair, I just would like to make a statement that the approval of the resolution is subject to a 10-day appeal period, which will conclude on, I believe, Friday the 17th.
And then Shanae can get out of town.
And any appeal will need to be filed with the city clerk along with the appropriate appeal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, it is 8:34. We still have two rather long items. Would people be opposed to taking our break here? Okay, we're not opposed to it. All right. I gotcha. I understood. Let us take our 5-minute break, and then we will be back at 8:40. Thank you. All right, so sound off, video off. Are we all back? 1, 2, 3, 4.
Madam Chair, I'm having some problems here.
Okay.
It says I can't restart my video because you've done something.
Uh-oh. Oh, there you are. We see you now. But you're on mute.
Okay.
Do you see? Okay, we're good to go. All right, very good. Thank you very much. All right, so we're back on the agenda. And we are at item number 10, public hearing. There are no new items. And we move on to item 11.1, non-public hearing. And this item is the presentation of the draft San Ramon Walking District Plan, visions, goals, and guidelines for feedback and recommendations to the City Council. We have a staff report from Mr. Barr.
Thank you. I'm going to start with a couple comments and then turn it over to our consultants for a PowerPoint. But I just wanted to touch on the fact that included in part of the City Council priorities for back in fiscal year 1920 was a statement to explore the development of a walking district with community partners that would support the emphasis on housing in the city core. Staff began working on the walking district plan with our consultants design workshop in January of 2021. At this point, I'm going to just turn it right over to Stephanie Grigsby with design workshop to provide the balance of the presentation. And we'll be available for questions and comments afterwards.
Very good.
Thank
Go ahead,
you.
Stephanie, you're up.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, commissioners, for the time this evening. Again, my name is Stephanie Grigsby, a principal with Design Workshop, and thank you for your time this evening. As Lauren said, the development of this walking district plan had its origins in a grassroots effort, which again led to one of the City Council's priorities to explore the development of a walking district with community partners. Really, that would support the emphasis on housing in the city core and the city's parks and trails, open space and recreation master plan. Also, in 2020, at the end, near 2020, also had identified as one of its high priority goals to develop a framework plan for a walking district within the city core. The plan itself expanded upon the initial focus area that had been envisioned by the citizen group to include what you see on the screen in front of you in blue, to expand from being around City Center and Central Park to including the area from Crow Canyon Road south past Bollinger Canyon Road and east to west from Augusta Boulevard to I-680. And really the idea was to, again, provide a long-term vision for pedestrian-oriented access and connectivity within this area. The process also built upon the efforts that the grassroots group had done and broadened those efforts to include conversations with East Bay Regional Parks District, with city staff, with county staff, including additional interviews with the Walking District Committee and other property owners. Through the process, we conducted a number of virtual stakeholder work sessions, virtual public meetings to discuss, what the opportunities and issues were, how we might be able to improve the walkability and make it more enjoyable and comfortable, and then what those destinations and gyms were in the study area that we really wanted to connect and make sure we linked up. We conducted additional work sessions to look at the draft recommendations, to think about signage and routes and logos and theming, and then worked with the stakeholders to refine the document itself as well. Those discussions both confirmed and refined the goals that are presented on your screen on the right. To again, concepts of comfort, improving the physical ability in terms of shade and seating, but then also connectivity to those destinations for civic areas, recreation and commercial areas, and thinking about connectivity in terms of both the places people who live in the area now, and then also those that would live there in the future. Also talked about ideas for enhancing wayfinding and
looking at loops and routes for the walking district itself. The loops and routes started with the diagram that you see to your left in the lower left-hand corner of the screen that was identified as part of the grassroots group, looking at how we can connect Central Park, which you see in the lower part of that image, across Camino Ramon to the lakes at Bishop Ranch. Those loops were, as we identified them in the plan, began to evolve to include not just that one route, but a number of routes. Those routes, as seen here, start as opportunities in Central Park in the yellow loop for Citywalk, and then also the green loop for Central Park, the Central Park loop. And then thinking about how we can connect across Central Park, across the Iron Horse Trail, and really make it a bit more of a seamless transition and encourage people to explore. So the diagram here indicates in these orange arrows that you see, enhanced connections at Bishop Drive across Iron Horse Trail. We'll show an example of that in a minute. And then also at Executive Parkway, really enhancing those connections so it feels more connected from the park over to the city center and Citywalk area. In the thinner faded orange dotted lines, those arrows really indicate the idea of connectivity within, so mid-block connectivity to help people explore, to think about, as new development comes online, that really it's about opportunities to find different ways to walk through those zones. And then within BR 2600, there are dotted dashed lines that connect through the buildings as well, that when those buildings are open and manned, that those connections could remain open as well. This Lakes Loop is really a refinement of that red alignment that I mentioned previously from the grassroots group. Again, connecting from Central Park across Iron Horse Trail and to the lakes. It does diverge slightly from that previous alignment, in that we're really looking at connections along Bishop Drive and along Executive Parkway, rather than bringing people through the parking lot itself, really in consideration of trying to minimize how many interactions people have with vehicles to just reduce those conflicts. The next route is an opportunity to think about connection around Citywalk. So this is a Citywalk loop, and then expanded from that would be a perimeter loop, connecting for those who might want a longer walk and really be able to connect around a little bit further. And then here shown in purple is the Iron Horse Trail Loop, again, taking advantage of the great resources in the community, but thinking about different alternatives for people to make their way through the project area and really explore. And then as you put them all together, again, just different opportunities for people to think about how they might encourage walking, either for health, for fitness, for socialization, to be able to meet with your neighbor or someone else, and just to also really explore the area itself. One of the important parts of the project was really looking at branding and thinking about, what is the message that we want to share and convey with people as part of the walking district. And again, this is one of the elements that began to expand from looking at a project area to thinking about a branding concept that could really be citywide and community-wide, as we think about, promoting walking for a multitude of reasons, and switching from a walking district to a branding concept of Walk San Ramon. The ideas that had been conveyed were ones that really thought about being playful, that we are clean and timeless, and that it balances urban and natural, and that it balances the past and the future. And again, thinking about something that is energetic and a bit dynamic and can be layered with existing signage, such as that you see on the right that exists within the project area itself. We also looked at how that wayfinding could be layered in terms of how to organize and help people know about what routes they might take and how to explore. So looking at 3 layers of signage that is shown in blue are those that would be information kiosks, maybe contain map mileage and information, but things that help to orient people. In red are the red dots are decision-making signage. So those are wayfinding signage to help people know, do you want to turn right here or left there, or being able to help direct people through the walking district itself. And then in purple are those confirmation signs. Again, thinking about different ways that could be achieved, either through an app, through signage that incorporates mapping within it, or it could be embedded in paving itself. Next, we also looked at what those supporting amenities might be in terms of really having a robust experience. And again, thinking about not just the walkway, but benches and seating, potential for public art, the identity for drinking fountains, and then also proposed restrooms. So in red, you see opportunities for additional seating within the district. And purple, the dark purple, are proposed drinking fountains or water filling stations. In green, proposed restrooms. Those facilities would likely be more associated with parks and other areas that would be manned and have more regular maintenance. And then ideas for public art as well, shown in blue. Again, a lot of these ideas would be as new projects come online and as opportunities for art appear, those final locations would be determined as part of those future projects. When we think about the project area, one thing that's really important and needs to be recognized is the fact that it is primarily under private ownership, as seen on the diagram on the left. In pink, that shaded back pink color indicates areas of private ownership. You can see Central Park in green. There's also areas of right-of-way that the city has influence over, and then the Iron Horse Trail, which the county and East Bay Regional Park have jurisdiction over. Also to recognize that the right-of-way itself is limited. Many of the pathways actually are outside of the right-of-way. So really, that really speaks to the idea of partnership. And it also speaks to the idea that the plan itself really needs to be aligned with approved projects, such as those seen on the right, which is an image and a graphic from the Citywalk design guidelines, in which they looked at pedestrian circulation and came up with a series of organization of parkways and paths and sidewalks. So really the plan aligns with those approved plans, such as the Citywalk design guidelines, City Village, but looks to think about opportunities for public-private partnership and thinking about how when private development does come online, how many of the concepts can be moved forward. As we began to organize and develop the guidelines to think about what the walking district looks like in the future, that again became organized according to those previous plans, but also became organized in these series of 6 categories that you see on the right, with the Iron Horse Trail, with the Citywalk Parkways, primary connectors, secondary connectors, primary recreation paths, and secondary recreation paths. Those categories are really organized both by place. The parkways, connector, and primary and secondary connectors are really organized in terms of thinking of those systems that might be near or adjacent to roadways, and those that are within parks and off the paths are those recreation paths. And I'll take you through the guidelines that relate to each of those categories. So starting with the Iron Horse Trail, the recommendations here really align with the East Bay Regional Park District's Iron Horse Trail corridor study recommendations, where within this section, they recommend separating those primary uses. So you would have a section that is really focused on what they call the rolling path, which is a 14-foot section primarily for cyclists and for other wheeled facilities. And then separated from that would be a 6 to 8 foot walking path for walkers, runners, etc. Again, thinking about opportunities for providing seating. So this diagram expands enlarges a section of the Iron Horse Trail. In red dots, you see opportunities for seating, opportunity for shade where possible. And then again, these opportunities associated with the bold orange arrows to really think about those connections into Central Park and then also to Bishop Ranch and to Citywalk itself. So just a quick illustration of what that could look like along the trail itself. Again, thinking about separating those uses, having additional opportunities for shade within this piece, signage, and then seating. And then at that intersection near Bishop Drive and Central Park, you can see Central Park in the far portion of this image, looking at connecting with a bike roundabout where the cyclists can come in, opens up the view a little bit and has an improved bridge connection across to Central Park. Again, just looking at something that can really be really iconic and then also really improve that visual and physical connection across. The Citywalk parkways really, again, align with the Citywalk design guidelines, in which we identified these walking corridors where you have a series of sidewalks that are adjacent to the residential areas, and then also a separated shared use path, and really looking at opportunities to preserve trees where we can, and then also provide additional amenities. The location for the Citywalk parkways is also identified in the lower right-hand corner of your screen here. So this series of parkways would align with those streets that you see in the yellow in the lower right. Primary connectors are very similar to the Citywalk parkways, but those are the connectors that are higher use than secondary connectors. So they would have larger volumes of people potentially. But again, looking at opportunities to separate them from the roadway to provide a little bit of a landscape buffer and a widened pathway for those people to walk on. In the lower right-hand corner, you can see in blue those areas where we have identified for primary connectors to be. Again, carrying that idea of the Citywalk parkways north along Camino Ramon and then along Norris Canyon. In the section at the top of the slide, you can see an example of how that could be applied on Norris Canyon Road, where on the north side of the road, we would separate the walkway from the roadway, and then on the south side actually provide a sidewalk there as well with a landscape buffer. Secondary connectors are likely to have lower volumes of use. So again, looking at opportunities to separate them from the roadway, but potentially not as wide as a primary connector. And the final width would likely be determined by some of the physical constraints of the site itself. Here on this slide, you can see again in the lower right-hand corner, the light blue lines indicate those areas of secondary connectors throughout the project area. And then on the upper portion of the slide, you can see a northern section of Camino Ramon, where again, looking at opportunities where possible to separate the walkways from the roadway and provide a landscape buffer and just vegetation and shade. Primary connectors, again, are those connectors, primary recreation connectors are those that flow within parks. So again, as even the primary, other primary connectors align against parks, those could meander into those future park areas as well, but might be wider. These primary recreation connectors, as seen in the images on the right, throughout the lakes, a widened path that has seating and shade and opportunities to rest. And then secondary recreation connectors are similar, but again, likely to have lower use volumes. So as part of an overall circulation hierarchy within parks and other active recreation areas, just a narrower parkway system that could connect up elements of arts and other amenities. But overall, as part of the entire plan, within each of those 6 categories of organization of the connectors, trying to identify and really set forward the objectives to apply these benefits of elements of walkability, these 4 elements, and then 8 principles. First, giving people a reason to walk, that it needs to be direct and really provide convenient connections so that people will take that desired connection route, that it provides, enhances health, providing routes and loops that encourage walking for physical and mental fitness, that they're safe, in which they reduce conflicts between pedestrians and vehicles, that they're traversable, they help people move from place to place without major obstacles, that they're comfortable. So in that instance, we're thinking about shade, we're thinking about seating, and then that we're also thinking about layering them with other transportation strategies. So making sure that they connect to transit and other bike route systems. And finally, that they're really interesting, that they're lively, that they really engage someone and want them, encourage them to explore and to linger longer. And then also really enticing them in terms of thinking about the physical design through material selection, through other amenities, to and attractive signage and paving to, again, really encourage people to walk. So again, thank you for your time this evening, and I will let you be available for questions. Thanks.
All right, very good. Thank you. Okay. So we are going to see if we have clarifying questions, or do we wish to hear from other participants before we? Okay, Commissioner Marks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have some questions about process. For instance, there's reference to a grassroots walking district citizens committee. Could someone explain what that was and who was on it?
Staff. It's going to fall to you. You're on mute.
Sorry, I lost my mouse. I couldn't find it. So again, there was a grassroots effort with some residents and people that participated in our boards and commissions. There was a presentation several years ago from this group to the Economic Development Advisory Committee regarding this idea. And so those basic concepts were taken and then engaged with stakeholders, including property owners, as well as some of those members of the original citizens group to provide feedback. So they were part of the stakeholders that met and discussed these issues going forward. I couldn't give you a list of the original group off the top of my head. We probably need to talk a little bit with the Parks Commission as well, or Parks and Recreation people.
When you say residents, I mean, they were just people from the community who were not on commissions or boards or property owners?
There were some were members of boards, some were just residents that were interested in the idea of a walking district. Our former mayor was involved in some of the discussions related to the walking district as a concept. And again, they took the initiative to start a visioning exercise that was then handed off to the city to pursue. And again, we took it and broadened the process to include property owners and stakeholders as well.
What property owners were involved? I assume Sunset was involved, of course, but what other property owners and what properties are we talking about?
We had Sunset Development was involved, Summerhill was involved, PG&E, representatives from Kaiser, Chevron, Sports Basement.
Okay.
Yeah, so we went beyond just the immediate development community here and went north, as well as the Chamber of Commerce was involved in some capacity, and then Federal Realty had a representative at one point, and they participated at various levels. We also did outreach to the county and other departments within the city to get information regarding Iron Horse Trail, East Bay Regional Park District as well.
Thanks, Lauren.
Other questions at this junction? No questions. All right. So at this point, we can open up public comment. Let's see, I get my little chart up. All right.
All righty. I do see a couple of hands raised. As a reminder, you can click the *9 button on your telephone or the raise your hand button on your computer if you would like to speak during this item.
Okay.
In We do not have any written communication for this item. So I could go ahead and just pull from the audience through the chair if that works for you.
That will be fine. And then
All right.
just a reminder that we get 3 minutes.
Yes, 3
Okay,
minutes.
very good.
Okay, so we have call-in user 1. You can speak whenever you're ready.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
First of all, bravo to all the commissioners. How you have criticized the state of California is truly exhilarating. I hope you will please send Governor Newsom and those senators and assemblymen one of our videos. Truly bravo. Excellent. So I just want to say from my perspective as a homeowner, I currently live in a townhome that must be really, really attractive because every morning and every afternoon, I would see the same people walking in front of my house 6, 7, 8, 10 different times. And I actually paid a lot premium to be in a more secluded area with a view. Despite I'm in a private community, all these people, they don't care because they're being dropped off in vehicles from Oakland or other places. They're not necessarily from San Ramon, but they enjoy walking around my house. I just want to say that it is truly amazing that you guys have put down, the previous development, which is livable. I can actually see, maybe a divorcee living in that ADU, at a best friend's place, or I can charge my college son or daughter for living in that ADU and they can walk, or I can drive them. Those are actually livable places. But this one, you are talking about, people can walk around drinking fountain. You're building houses for Rapunzels. When I read Rapunzel, I always wondered, what kind of tower, does she have that she doesn't need to go to the bathroom? She doesn't need to wash her hair, and she doesn't need to cook. All she needs to do is just stay there looking beautiful with her long hair. Honestly, truly, this place is becoming so communist Chinese. I'm so glad that Schnee, before he retired, is able to gift us with something that is American affordable housing. If we go by the cast, I'm on the lower bottom of the feed, but I still have the honor to enjoy quality of life. Thank you, Shanae. I will always remember you. Thank you.
All right. Thank
Right.
you very much.
Thank you. Okay, and we have Bill Clarkson. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you very much. I assume you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. First off, I want to thank the commission for the opportunity. I also want to thank staff and everybody involved in this process. This began a number of years ago, and it's really involved into a much larger area than we had first imagined. When we first talked about the walking district, it was about 2 miles, and what I wanted to emphasize in my comments were those 2 miles that you walked in those trails were all interior areas. And by that, I mean, it was through Central Park, went around the lake at AT&T, BR 2600 now, and then through the city center. And the point I wanted to make, and I would like to ask this commission to consider adding some language to this plan, is that there'd be an emphasis on the walking trails being through the interior areas of neighborhoods and not just along the major roads. The appeal to this at the beginning was people could take walks in quiet areas through the interior areas of our parks and of the areas here. And if we could focus on emphasizing the importance of future trails going through the interiors of neighborhoods and not along busy roads, I think that would be a huge addition to already a marvelous plan. And I want to thank you all for your contributions to this. San Ramon is a far richer community because of all of you, all the commissioners and our staff people, and the amazing work you all do for us residents. So I'm saying thank you to you all. Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. It looks like that was our last speaker. I don't see any other hands up at the moment.
I will concur with that. And at this point, then I'm going to close the public comment, and we will turn it over to the commissioners for discussion.
Madam Chair, I do have a question now that we heard public
Okay.
comment. Lauren or Debbie, could you explain what will happen, assuming this plan or some version of it gets adopted by council as it relates to ongoing implementation and expectations of future property owners doing something? I mean, when we were doing BR6, we had a little discussion about this is private property and, it's will be part of a zoning code, a general plan. Maybe you can kind of help explain what this will evolve to.
Okay, this is not an ordinance or implementation standard. It's a visioning document. And so it's something that we can rely on as a coordinated effort to try and accomplish the goals of this vision through the implementation of individual development plans, not to mention city initiatives on top of that, related to signage, wayfinding, that sort of things. Those are all subject to, city council, budget constraints and moving forward with programs through CIP and the like. But ultimately, it's a way of focusing our vision as these pieces come in over time, but is not prescriptive in the sense that anyone has to build a 6-foot trail or an 8-foot trail. We look at where the opportunities are, and we work with developers through the process to try and accomplish the goals of the plan and build out this network over time. It's in many ways is similar to a bike master plan too. It's again, it's a goal and a vision. I know, Stephanie, do you have anything to add to that? Or
No, I thought you covered that well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I guess as a follow-up comment, we spent a lot of time in discussion of the city village and trying to coax a certain kind of walkability through the interior of that. And the hangup was, well, we didn't have the walking district plan in place. And so, I think, at least for me as a commissioner, I'm certainly hoping that if and when this is, however it is ratified or implemented or whatever the technical language, it will actually afford us to be more assertive in what we ask future projects to accomplish in this manner.
Well, I would definitely agree that it gives us something to point to and a basis to ask for things. We are always going to be constrained regarding proportionality and a nexus to what we are asking. We can't put the burden entirely on a property owner for the implementation of something like this. However, again, through use of city resources and through the negotiation process and an expectation that the area will develop in a certain way, I think we can and continue to promote these policies to achieve the vision, and that's the goal. It's not going to be perfect in every project. There are constraints, there's utility issues, there's all kinds of things that aren't really even known at this time. And so it really will come down to an incremental case-by-case implementation strategy.
All right, other commissioners? I have lots of thoughts on this, so I'm going to, hopefully you guys will also weigh in. Right, yes, Commissioner Edwards. You're on mute. Hang on.
Thank
All right.
you. I suppose that I'd like to echo Mayor Clarkson's comments about the importance of trying to encourage private developers to integrate the walking district into their projects. And I think that one way that we may be able to do that, and something that I think I would put forward as an idea for City Council consideration, is this idea of providing developers with some open space credit if they're bringing substantial walking district type improvements into their project. Some of the larger roundabouts, for example, that we saw in some of the illustrations, that's a considerable amount of land. It's not quite park space, but it starts to look, taste, and smell like park space. And I think that that's one way that we can encourage more integration of the walking district with private developments.
It sounds like an excellent idea. I like that. Well done. Other commissioners? We're providing feedback so that on this plan. Commissioner Marks.
First of all, I want to say that I very much like the plan for its recommendations. It's easy to read language. Its format, the graphics and the imagery depicting current and proposed conditions. I think it's very well done. I have an ask or a recommendation. It's relatively minor, but it really isn't for people that it affects. And that is, early in the plan, pathways are described as being paved, but in other parts of the plan, the word pathways stands by itself. And the concern I have is, and I was guilty of this when I was a staffer, cities for some reason got enamored of crushed granite walkways or crushed stone walkways. And for a large segment of the population, they just don't work. 2 years, 3 years after normal rainy seasons, they're washed out. People have walked on them and they get divoted, bicycles ride on them, they get divoted. Even in the summer, unless every sprinkler head in the area is accurately aimed, they get flooded. Or after a rain, they don't drain very often. So I would ask that wherever the word pathways is used, right before it, please insert the word paved. There are several locations along public streets, Bishop Drive, Camino Ramon, etc., where again, the word pathways shows up, and I appreciate that, but it doesn't say paved pathways. And I would ask, again, if you've ever had to walk with somebody that's in a walker or uses a cane, there are just some pathways they can't walk on. And if you want to see a real world example, go to Memorial Park to the meadow, half of which is very well done with a paved asphalt walkway, and part of which is a sort of former crushed granite or crushed gravel pathway. So I would ask that. In the first time we talked about this, Lauren and I went back and forth a couple of times about whether this should be prescriptive or should it be a vision statement. I'm still of the opinion that it would not be amiss to make it much more prescriptive, partly because if you want a coordinated walking district rather than that one that property A agreed and property B didn't, and so the walking path is discontinued or something is not there, jawboning doesn't always work. And we know as planning commissioners and staff that we regulate private property all the time through general plans, zoning ordinances, specific plans. I think it's just a missed opportunity that will happen in the future. Further, property turns over, and new owners may not be aware of the visioning document and be surprised when they show up in the staff's office with a plan that they worked on that does not include what we are trying to accomplish here. I don't want to lay out measurement guidelines. I don't want to lay out, very restrictive guidelines. I would simply think that inserting a section right ahead of the design guidelines saying that every property is expected, to the extent that the physical characteristics of the property allow, they're expected to include pathways. They're expected to include cutouts. They're expected to include park area. They're expected to include as much of what the plan is really talking about in order to make it a livable, walkable, attractive area as possible. Certainly the city is going to have to be reasonable. Certainly there are some properties that just won't be able to do much, and that will be up to the Planning Commission staff at the time to think reasonably. On the other hand, failure to do that, again, does not ensure that you have any kind of a plan that turns out the way that you're talking about. And so I would ask that at least the council be given the opportunity to weigh in on that and decide whether or not they think that's worthwhile. I'm not asking you to insert it now or come up with language now, but to present it to the council as we want these things, we expect you to do some things. And again, that's not so different from any specific plan. It's not so different from how we regulate the use, the development, the design of properties. The last thing I would say, and again, I'm very complimentary of this plan and look forward to its being implemented. We have a public art program in the city. And I've always wondered why we would put public art on commercial properties the way we do. It seems to me this is an opportunity, if we're looking for public art, to say that the public art obligation of any property that is subject to providing public art the art will be placed in the walking district, or at least in a public park. An example is you can go to Home Depot and there's a public art piece at the corner that almost nobody knows about. I've asked people, what do you think of it? And they didn't know it was there. I'm not criticizing the art itself. I'm not any kind of artist. I don't have a good sense of what public art would be. My sense of good public art is George Washington on a horse with a sword. But I do think here's an opportunity. We know that there's a funding source out there, and if we don't take advantage of it, it will take a lot longer before we get public art in some of these places. And for those projects that come in well before we're ready for them to be placed in an area, it seems to me that the value of the public art could be collected as a fee, if it isn't already required, and held in a trust fund with the city until such time as we do have a place to put the art. And then the Arts Committee can take a look at what that actual piece should be. So that's another recommendation that I would put forward and ask that the council be given the opportunity to weigh in on it. But in closing, again, I want to compliment Stephanie and her team, Lauren and Debbie on the work that they did. I'm not aware of any other city in the area that has anything quite like this. I think it was a very well done piece of work. And for those property owners that contributed and hopefully made some tentative, you can't hold me to it agreements, but showed some interest, I'm thankful for them doing that.
Thank you, Commissioner Marks. Commissioner Albert, Commissioner Wallace. Alphabetically.
I'll let Eric go first.
Okay.
Okay, as a philosophical matter, I'm in favor of people walking. As a practical matter, in terms of the walking district, my first thought is who's going to be walking there? Now, at the present time, the logical route to be walking through the district is people who work in Bishop Ranch. But as you know, a lot of people are working from home. So that's at the moment probably a small constituency. The next group would be the people who live down there. And we've permitted almost 5,000 homes in that general area. But as you know, that is going to be built over 20 to 25 years. So for at least the near and the intermediate term, who are the subjects of this walking district? Well, we have 90,000 people roughly in San Ramon, but very few live down in the central core right now. Half of them live where I do in Doherty Valley. So you have to ask yourself, what is going to cause me to go down to the core area and walk around? Now, I could walk from my car to field work, but right now there is nothing between field work and Total Wine that really is a place to see. And I was struck by Ms. Grigsby's material because if you look at the graphics that she displays, in virtually, I would say 80% of all the pictures, the people who are walking by something to do. There are outdoor concerts, there are seats, there are shops, there are street scenes that were basically lifted from all of the pictures we saw of mixed-use developments, whether they're in Georgia or Chicago. They are things to people to do. And right now we are in a situation where it is questionable about once you get past BR 2600, there's going to be much for people to do. Obviously, the office buildings are not. BR 6 is going to be all residential, no retail. You go on the west side of Camino Ramon, it's all residential. And if you go past Norris Canyon North, it's really small commercial. So where are you going to put the things that people actually want to walk to or walk past? Now, the North Camino Ramon plan proposed destination retail where the Toyota plot was. But we've all been hearing for 2 years that destination retail is dead. And that what we really should put down there is housing, medium or high density housing. So I think you have to be realistic about who's actually going to be doing the walking. Iron Horse Trail is a separate subject because that's a totally standalone place to go. But in terms of the central area, and that's BR 26, maybe down to Executive Parkway, I think you have to take into account what's going to draw people who don't live or work in that area to go down there and walk. What type of activities are going to do that? I know that we looked at a number of pictures on BR 2600 of the flex spaces along some of the buildings, and that might be enough to do it. I hope that Sunset foresees that there's a demand sufficient to actually put that stuff in. That might draw people. But I think it's a great plan. It satisfies a worthwhile purpose, which is to get people out of cars, off their couches, and go outside and exercise and do something healthy. But I think you have to be realistic about what it is that's going to make people want to do that, because simply an 8-foot walking path past BR3 to me is not going to actually do it. So that's my thoughts.
Mr. Albert.
So first of all, I thought the plan was really well done, very high quality, easy to follow, easy to digest. I think my comments are really on suggestions to try and make sure it doesn't become one of those pretty plans that goes on a shelf and is never looked at again. And so that was the spirit of my comments as it goes to City Council. First of all, who within the city owns the plan? Who's going to come to work every day thinking about this plan? Right now, my understanding is it's a shared responsibility. And in my experience, when something's shared, it's not really well owned. I'd also recommend that the City Council be given annual progress updates much like they receive general plan updates or all of our citizen advisory committees are asked to do annually, just on progress towards the plan, because I think that will keep it top of mind to the city council when it comes to goal setting and funding decisions. They're reminded of the plan regularly. Something that I compared this plan to the bicycle master plan, because I think they have a lot of similarities, and Lauren, affirmed that too. When I looked at the bicycle master plan, it looked to me like very conceptual, but it also dove down another layer deeper in that it identified specific projects that the city would like to see implemented over the years. And I felt like this plan could use a little more of that, in that way. And even if it's the intent or the focus is only on the city responsible, because as we've all been hearing, private property owners, may have unique constraints or whatever it is. But I think if we'd identify unique, distinct projects that could be prioritized, every year, it might make it easier to secure funding and move the plan forward. To the extent possible, I think the city council will need cost estimates for these projects. I think when they prioritize or want to fund something, having a sense of what it might cost is always pretty important. Something else I saw in the bicycle master plan, there were about 3 pages with probably 2 or 3 dozen potential funding sources for implementing segments of the plan, identifying, grant opportunities that the city might pursue. I would think that that would be something that would be really helpful. And I would assume that, Stephanie and the consultant team might be aware of some of those things that could help the city secure funding on these things. I remember in the parks, trails, and open space plan, there was a discussion of how to fund a lot of this. And it had a pretty thorough, robust discussion of ways to fund this. And I think that would be helpful for the city council to hear as well, whether it's additional fees or impact fees or, car washes, whatever it might be. I think, finding a way and giving them some ideas on how some things could be funded. And then lastly, you didn't ask, but I was really, really impressed with the logo page that you came up with. I thought it was really outstanding. And for what it's worth, my vote would be concept 2 as my first choice, concept 3 is my second choice. And the reason I think those 2 is I think those lend themselves to be expanded beyond the walking district. I could easily see Shop San Ramon, Visit San Ramon, Play San Ramon, all fitting into that same logo and theme. And that's something that I know that the TBID Discover San Ramon's been talking about for 3, 4, 5 years. And I think you guys nailed it on this time right here. And I think, if they haven't been brought into the team, I think they should, because I think the logos were just great. And with that, again, I think the plan is great. And the spirit of my comments are to make sure that it moves forward and actually sees implementation. So thank you so much, and terrific job, everybody that worked on it.
Thank you, Commissioner Alpert. All right, I have my comments, and then we will send this off likely to City Council. So my first comment is, first of all, I agree. It was a very well done plan. It was easy to follow and very thorough. So the first comment that I have is that we do have this unique opportunity to decide who the walking district serves. And one of the things that was surprising to me is in the packet that we got was the graphic in which who owns the land was towards the end. And when I got there, I was really saddened, because you see this tiny little green square, which is Central Park, and everything else in the walking district is privately owned. This then begs the question of, are we trying to create a walking district that the property owners will agree to, or are we trying to create a walking district for the citizens of San Ramon? And I believe, okay, I've said this before, I believe my role as a commissioner is to represent the citizens of San Ramon. And so these things are important to specify items like, walkways should be designed to be in the interior of residential areas. And I think that's really important, because if we approach it the other direction, that's going to be different. Then we're not leading the horse is leading us. So that's number one. The second item is, and I've said this in other meetings, I feel really strongly that part of why our current usage of the Iron Horse is so common and well used is because it is absolutely away from automobiles. If we are going to have a viable walking district, I want us to be bold and follow the lead that Livermore did, which is to say to Camino Ramon that needs to be less car-centric and more bicycle people-friendly. They removed a lane from downtown Livermore, and they have then subsequently created the walkways, the points of interest, in a very, very vibrant walking district. If you look at Danville, vibrant walking district. Why? Because there's only 2 lanes of traffic. Cars don't dominate it, the people do. And I think that is really important. I've said this before. If we want this to be a bicycle walking district, then we cannot keep letting cars dictate it. And I just believe that we can do this. We absolutely can do this. The east-west of Bollinger Canyon Road and the east-west of Norris, but Alcosta can be a wider road. It already is. Camino Ramon could be reduced and made it through that section much user-friendly. The other thing that I would like to say, as a person who does spend a lot of time walking and actually walking in this area, is it's a missed opportunity, and I would like the plan to reconsider this, to have not included a loop up and over San Ramon Regional Medical Center. This is a natural addition for those who want perhaps a little more robust workout. So you cross from Iron Horse, you cross Alcosta, up and around the back of the hospital, back down Norris. It also provides an opportunity for a much needed walkway to the hospital for public use. So I think that is a missed opportunity. Let's see, I just have notes on multiple pages here. But I think that those are the 2 really big items in terms of it. And I also want to support Commissioner Wallace's comment about the walking district and say that one of the things that is the challenge to have exterior walkways is there isn't anything to see. And in the pictures and in the document, it's specified that people choose to walk because they have something to see. And if you are only going to be walking the perimeter of, for example, 2600, there's nothing to see. It does not activate what it is that we're looking at. And so I'd like to see us again support this concept of the interiors and not so much the exterior of the pathway. So those are really the bulk. Those 3, I put up 3 main comments. Really look at reducing cars on Camino Ramon. Think about the loop up over the hospital, and just really decide who this serves, whether we're going to tell property owners what we want or have them tell us what they could do. So that those would be the summation. And I agree. I think, having a vision statement that interior trails should be a priority. You've got very busy streets, and if you have kids, and a lot of this could be, entry-level housing with small children, you want places to walk where your kids don't you don't have to worry about them dealing with busy traffic and lots of cars. I bike on Camino Ramon and and North Canyon, and it can be kind of dicey. So again, just safety and separation. Those would be my comments. And again, I think that I'm anxious to see this being codified, I guess, as best we can, so that we can guide future use in this area. So, all right, Commissioner Marks, your hand came back up. We can't hear you. Hold on. There you go.
As a follow-up to all of the comments, I'd like to ask staff a process question. What happens now? Is this the only time the commission will see the draft plan? And what do you propose to do with all of the comments that you got?
Lauren?
Yeah, so the plan is similar presentation will go to the Parks Commission tomorrow night to solicit comments from them. Then we'll be forwarding both the commission and the Planning Commission and Parks Commission comments onto the council, based on what you're recommending, and we'll receive direction from the council at that point on how to proceed. And again, these are all considerations that have pros and cons, and need to be measured against competing interests. So it's something that we'll present what we're hearing and summarize it, and we'll get direction from the council.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other last comments before we? I just want to staff, you're sufficient with our feedback, and
I think it's
are we
very
all
helpful.
agreeing to recommend that the plan be brought to the city council? Do we have to vote on this? Lauren, Debbie? Does this require a motion? Because
I do see we have a hand up for Jerry Ingen from Bishop Ranch, who may like to comment. So if
okay,
we-
very good. All right. Go ahead, Mr. Ingen.
Thank you, commissioners and Chair Kuznick. I just wanted to say, as obviously one of the major stakeholders of the private property owners of this walking district, I really think that staff and the consultants have done a great job at weaving all of the elements in that make a good walking district. And a lot of these comments that the commissioners have made, all of you have made, are really valid and really good. And I think, as you know, Sunset has truly embraced this idea of the walking district, and we kind of laid the foundation for this district with the wide linear park system that we put around 2,600. And of course, the intent of bringing all of those walking paths through the middle of the project and creating wonderful streets and neighborhood parks and lakes, and the walking around the lakes and things that will make it unique and interesting to walk. And then the proximity to city center, where you can come, and there are a lot of people that come from Doherty Valley and walk around the lakes with their dogs and then end up at city center at Starbucks or at Joe's or field work. And so there will be interesting things there, as the neighborhoods get built out, and there'll be arts scattered around, and there'll be lots of different kinds of walking environments. There'll be the walking environment when you're walking around the perimeter, which is a really wide, 60-foot wide landscape, beautiful area, as opposed to walking down the neighborhood with stoop streets and people and kids and families interacting and going into neighborhood parks. And so there'll be different kinds of elements, and it will be different as you're walking around the loop around Great Park or up to the medical center and all those things. So there'll be a very wide variety of walking elements. I do want to be careful about mandating paved areas everywhere. I do think that in a lot of places it's important, and all weather surfaces are important. But if you walk around our lakes today, which is DG, and a lot of it is what we call stabilized DG, it holds up very well. Now, it does have to be maintained. You can't just let it go for years, but it creates a nice walking feel. And I think it's, it would be a much different feel if those were concrete walks around that lake as opposed to the DG walks. It wouldn't be the same feel and the same ambiance that we have there today. So I want to make sure that we provide enough flexibility to create these varying walking areas and surfaces so that it creates, uniqueness, and it's not all the same everywhere. But I'm looking forward to us implementing elements of this walking district as we continue to develop through the Citywalk, master plan, and as Summerhill is developing the city village plan and implementing the walks and things that we've agreed to in that plan. And I think over time it will be quite nice to walk, and I think people will come there because it's really different than anything else in the city that they can walk on and see. Thank you.
Commissioner Marks, your hand is up. Hold on, you need some sound.
I just want to respond to something Jerry said. I understand what he's saying. And I think, unfortunately, not everybody takes care of their property the way that Sunset does. Sunset is sort of the gold standard of property maintenance in the city for a lot of different properties. If we're not going to mandate paved areas, at least let's call out where there's flexibility and what are the maintenance requirements and standards for non-paved areas. Otherwise, you can just walk around the city, either in parks or the Iron Horse Trail, and you don't have great property maintenance of the off the trail walking areas. So if there's some maintenance requirements and standards that are in the plan when you don't have a paved area, that seems workable to me.
Okay. Thank you.
So,
Go ahead.
So with regard to I think we have your comments. I think it's enough that we forward them on to the commission. I don't believe we need a formal vote. Again,
Okay.
we've been taking notes, and we will present it as part of our presentation to council.
All right. Very good. Thank you. And thank you to everyone involved in this presentation. We really appreciate it. All right. Excellent. All right. Moving on to item 12.1. Okay. A study session for the Rome Townhome Development and a staff report provided by Shinya Tsukamoto.
Good evening, commissioners, and I'd like to have our applicant promoted to the panelist, please. And I'd like to share our screen to summarize the staff report, but more likely to describe what this property is. Let me go here. Oops, that's not the one. There you go. So this project, Rome Townhome Development Concept Plan, was submitted a while ago. And this property is located at the Deerwood Road and Solomon Valley Boulevard in about 2.55 acres here. And this is also located at the Solomon Valley Specific Plan, Solomon Village Specific Plan, DCMU district. And the density here is 30 to 35 units per gross acres. But this property has several constraints. Solomon Creek runs at the south side of the property here, and it goes into culvert to cross this intersection here. And then also this is an elevation difference up to like 5 to 6 feet from the public roadway to the finished elevation of current ground level here. So all of that creates a very unique and physically challenging situation. And that this area in the pink especially here is a 100-foot creek setback, which is unbuildable. And also this part here is below or above the culvert. So no structure can be built on this one. So the applicant is proposing 60 townhome units with a 3,000 square foot retail on the podium construction above a 150 space parking lot right here. And with that density, based on the specific plan calculation, it will be 23.5 units per gross acres, where the specific plan requires for 30 to 35. Now, the applicant is specifically requesting if the commission would support a net acre standard as part of the general plan, as opposed to the gross acre requirement in the Salmon Valley specific plan. Because the creek setback area is unbuildable land, and they were requesting to have it excluded, so that a calculation of the density could be 30.8 units per net acre, which would be consistent with the general plan approach. And also the applicant is requesting the comments on the architectural design and the massing. So with that, the staff is recommending the commission receive the staff report and the presentation by the applicant and take public testimonies and provide comments to the applicant and staff. Now I'd like to share the screen for the applicant's presentation. And Jim, if you're ready, please go ahead.
Let me start off. Thank you, Chair Kusnik and commissioners for your time and hearing our presentation here tonight and staying so late and discussing this concept that we've put together. I'd also like to thank Shinye for all of his guidance and hard work on getting us to this point, and also to congratulate him on his retirement. I've only known him for a short amount of time and have enjoyed thoroughly working with him on this project and getting us to this point. I wish you well on your future endeavors, and I'm sad to see you go, but Rome looks forward to hopefully working with Lauren and the rest of staff, and hopefully bringing this concept to life. As you know, in our kind of history and our description, Rome's been a part of the site for several years now. And we've started looking at what would be required to build the original approved 169 unit project coming in 2022. And with that, it was tasked to me to look at other concepts and the opportunities to hopefully bring a project that would more closely relate to the Village Center mixed use concept that has been implemented for the site. During that time, we reached out to Dahlin Group, mainly for their design skills and their architectural knowledge, but also for their long connection and history with San Ramon. So we've thoroughly enjoyed working with them. They really kind of stepped up to the plate here and helped us, I think, achieve kind of an outside of the box conceptual design that meets, I think, the intent of the village specific plan. Our goal ultimately tonight is to hopefully get a definitive answer regarding the net versus gross square footage acreage question for density. Our project here mainly is intended to show as an example of how we meet the intent of the specific plan density requirements based on buildable area. I do have numbers available. I can spew parking numbers and square footages, and how they would relate to this project from a gross square footage standpoint, and how difficult it is to make that work with number of units and parking spaces. Our intent with the project is to meet the 15% BMR requirement with the city of San Ramon. We've indicated the number of units. I believe it's a total of 9 units for the site as proposed. Our goal would be to work with the city and meet San Ramon's criteria for sale BMR units. We have included that in our underwriting. So we've taken that into account from a feasibility standpoint, and are prepared to work with the city on those 9 units as a for sale product. Based on past projects that have been brought before the commission in this area, we're not seeking a zoning change. We're not asking, technically it is a density reduction if you look at the gross square footage, but this site provides some unique challenges with the creek area and the amount of unbuildable area. We took to heart some of the comments from the commission on past projects. We have incorporated 3,000 square feet of retail. It's a standalone portion for the project. It does fall within the requirements we feel of the specific plan. We can meet the parking requirements for it. From a viability standpoint, we looked at it with the size of the project, 3,000 square feet. We looked at it as 3 small retail spaces, coffee shops, dry cleaners, small cafe. We feel that is a viable amount of retail for the size of this corner, given the parking constraints and the area constraints. Ultimately, this is an exercise to show what can be built if we are allowed to look at this from a net square footage standpoint. And we're just hoping that the Planning Commission can work with us on this and hopefully bring the specific plan into more of a consistent language with the general plan. So I appreciate your time and like to open it up and hear your comments.
Commissioners, do we have clarifying questions before we open public comment?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
I guess the first question that I have is to the staff. I just want to be sure I understand what discretion the commission has in this case, if any. And so I'll ask, if the applicant does file a formal application, do the provisions of SB 330 apply?
Not at this point.
Well, not at this point, but if they file a formal application.
Formal application first, then SB 330 would not apply.
Well, if they make an SB 330 application, then they would vest under the current standards. There's no real advantage to doing this because they are going to need to comply with the standards as they exist. Now we would be subject to the number of hearing limitations, but again, vesting with a preliminary housing development application really doesn't give them any benefits under this provision. But the question about the density is really, it goes back to what was intended in the specific plan and whether that standard needs to be modified based on, what we're hearing in terms of feasibility of site development.
Well, feasibility is one thing. What are the legal constraints that the commission will have to work under when a formal application is before us is what I'm trying to get a more clear answer about. Here's my concern. Just across the street at Morgan's Masonry, we recently told an applicant who wanted to do a townhouse project that unfortunately we need the density on that site to help us meet our RENA numbers, and it is in the village specific plan where we can host a lot more density than we can in other areas and make a good faith effort toward meeting our RENA numbers. So if we felt that the 60 townhomes just didn't get us the kind of help we need with our RENA numbers, are we in a position to say, sorry, this is not the site?
I mean, my take on the reading of the specific plan is it's very clear, and the definition of gross versus net is clear in the case of the specific plan. And so that's the issue. Whether you go back and amend that definition or change it, it would require a different process. Shunye, can you unshare the screen so we can see the panel? Thank you.
I think the narrow point here is the definition of gross acreage in the specific plan is different than what's in the general plan. It was designed that way to identify it for that area. So there is a distinct difference than what we look at other properties. So if you look at calculating the gross square footage or the gross acreage, then at this point it does not comply with it. If the commission, as Lauren said, was to make an interpretation that under the zoning, the definition of the zoning ordinance would apply to the plan area, then that would be a different interpretation. But right now the plan is very specific and identifies gross acreage as the basis for calculating the numbers of units.
But we did argue about this 100-foot creek setback when the plan was going through, and that was something that we put back in to specifically not have development within that 100 feet setback, but 100 feet range.
Well, the development, that doesn't change the question of whether or not development occurs within the 100-foot setback. What it requires is that area that is not being developed in the setback triggers additional unit requirements to be put elsewhere on the site.
Okay.
So again, it's
I understand what you're saying.
Remove it entirely, or you have to accommodate it.
So let me ask you this question: when the proposal came for this to be apartments, before the San Ramon Village specific plan was in place, had that accommodated the creek setback?
Back then, they were looking for more units, so they wanted to even include the Windmill Farms property to increase the density. So the approach has totally changed 180 degrees.
Sure.
So back then, creek setback was included in a density calculation.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. All right,
Madam
Commissioner
Chair,
Wallace. Go ahead.
I'd like to continue.
All right, I'm sorry.
I'm not sure I am. Well, I'll skip that for a moment. You're talking about constructing on a podium. And my experience with podium developments is they are generally above street grade. And then you have your housing and whatever on top of that. But the imagery on A7 appears to show the houses at street grade.
Correct.
So my question is A7 accurate?
Yes. So again, along with all the other interesting aspects to this site, one is the grade on the site. It's high at the corner of Deerwood and San Ramon Valley Boulevard, which would basically be the top of the podium level, which gives access again to that retail that we've located right there on the corner. And then as it slopes down Deerwood and down San Ramon Valley Boulevard, the podium does come out of the ground, but it's basically creates almost an at-grade parking level below the podium, and then it comes back up towards the creek. So it's somewhat unique. It will have some elevation from some portions of the sidewalk along Deer Valley and San Ramon, but the top of the podium would essentially be at the grade or curb level right there at the corner of Deerwood and San Ramon Valley Road.
What I would ask is that in the future, if you do come back to the commission, that you show us those portions of the street view where the podium is above grade, so that we can see the whole sort of our general plan talks about a 360 view of projects. I'd like to be able to see just what the effect of the podium is from the public street. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just a couple quick things, just is if I may, as we go along. The comment regarding Morgan's masonry and the density calculations in the units per acre. The question that we've posed here, Morgan's Masonry came in with a project that was 23 to 24 units an acre. It was your standard townhome developer design, 2-car garage, 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom townhome. It was a developer's boilerplate plan. What we're trying to show here is we've thought outside the box to achieve that density in the buildable area. As stated, by taking the 100-foot setback out of the acreage, we have to put those units somewhere else. And if you look at it from a buildable area standpoint, the buildable area, when it's required to have the 78 to 91 units to meet the 30 to 35 units per gross acre, you essentially put the buildable area density at 40 to 47 units an acre. So the buildable area becomes denser than what the specific plan is asked for. What goes along with that increased area is increased parking. In order to meet that 78 to 91 units, we now are close to 190 to 219 parking spaces by our calculation, once you also include the retail space in there. The flip side of that is in order to reach that number of parking spaces, you have to have at least 2 levels of parking, which is a subterranean level, which is what we have on the 169 unit project, which again, that gets into the feasibility and financial impacts of everything. Our goal is to try and meet the specific plan requirements, and to show, from a mathematical standpoint, at 30 to 35 units an acre and 150 parking spaces, you need about 60,000 square feet to 70,000 square feet of area for parking. Our podium is about 70,000 square feet, so we can park underneath it and meet the parking requirement. If we have to get up to 219 spaces, we need 87 to 90,000 square feet of parking area. And we don't have that buildable area in 1.96 acres. So we can't even park spaces for the number of units required. So our time here is somewhat educational and looking for, the commission's guidance. We don't want to go down a path without some blessing and understanding on that. So those are just two items that we touched on briefly. So
I appreciate what you're saying, and I do understand your dilemma. We have a dilemma as well. We have these RENA numbers that we have to meet, and this is an area where we could meet them. And coming in 6 years after we approved 169 units and tell us you now want to do 60 units puts more pressure on us and on other properties within the city, some of which are closer to neighborhoods that exist, to do things there at a greater density. And so we're stuck trying to figure out how to get as much density on the site as possible, thinking that multifamily units were really the way to go. And I understand what you're saying from the standpoint of the project that you want to do. I'm not sure yet how to resolve that, but that's sort of where I see the city and where I see you. Let me ask you just a couple of other technical questions just to understand what I have before me. The staff report says that the buildings will be 35 feet tall. There appear to be two different building types. And at least the perspective that we've got seems to indicate that one is lower than the other. The more bulky one is lower than the townhouses. Am I wrong in seeing it that way?
No, that was, this is a block 3D diagram. That corner could be fenestrated, with varying heights, but it is basically a single story structure on the corner for the retail portion of the project.
I'm not talking about the retail. There are what appear to be townhouses that are located around bulkier other buildings toward the middle of the project.
I got you. I think it's
lower in height.
I think it's a representation of the 3D modeling. They're essentially on a podium. They would essentially be the same height-ish within reason. I think that would be articulated better if we go down the path, towards possible approval of a concept of this nature.
Okay.
I think that's a factor of the programming, honestly.
Okay. Well,
they would all essentially be 3-story townhomes.
At roughly 35 feet, all of them.
Yeah, I would
give or take a little bit.
Yeah, that's a fair statement based on the size of the units.
Okay. I went through the San Ramon Village specific plan, and I want to call out some of the key elements in the plan that, quite honestly, I don't see in this project so far. And what I would ask is, if you come back, it would be helpful to me, and I think other commissioners, if you would point by point, as located in the plan, tell us how the site planning responds to a pedestrian-oriented, attractive streetscape throughout the VCMU. As an example, if you turn to the vision section of the plan, the description of the village center mixed use district, and the placemaking framework, it talks about inviting streetscapes, heightening the pedestrian experience, including uses like pedestrian paseos, providing public amenities like benches, lighting, public art, landscaping, being bicycle friendly and integrating the bicycle and pedestrian experience, orienting development to creekside open space and taking advantage of creekside opportunities, providing live-work units, cutouts with benches, generous sidewalks, pedestrian connections to the creek. I don't see a lot of that here, and I recognize this is very preliminary, but when you come in with a more detailed plan, those are things that I think commissioners are going to be evaluating your plan against. And at least based on what we have today, it's not real obvious that those things are incorporated in the plan. And so I would look forward to those being included. I think the last thing that concerns me is, and I don't want to get into what commissioners really have no business in, but we have been told over the years that Rome can get the financing to build what we approved in, I think it was 2016. I don't need an explanation of why, but I sure hate to go through this again and not know that you're in a position to finance it.
So from a financing standpoint, that's something that I cannot address. That's outside of my scope. I'm a licensed architect. I'll be upfront with that. I am the development manager. My task is to, in this particular instance, was to think outside the box and see if there was an alternate solution to this project.
I accept that you're not the right guy.
Yeah.
And I don't want to put you
I
on the spot,
appreciate
but
that.
somebody in Rome,
Well,
we've never received any kind, at the commission level, any kind of explanation about why during the last 4 or 5 years, housing's been built all around the Bay Area and Rome can't get financing. And now the company, not you, but the company is back. And I know for me, that's a concern. In the biggest housing crisis the city and the area has had, with housing being built all over, a developer who's been around for a long time couldn't get it done. The question I would have in my mind is, why do I trust him this time? So I would ask somebody in the organization, not you, somebody in the organization, to the extent they can. I think this commission deserves an answer about what happened and why it won't happen again.
Well, the short, quick answer that I can give is it becomes a land cost issue, a construction cost issue, and then a rentable per unit cost issue, and being able to marry those two together, those three pieces together. What those numbers are, I can't give you specifics on it. I do know that construction costs, as I'm sure you're all aware, have gone through the roof and they've gone up and down. That's not our excuse at this point in time for bringing this to the commission. As I said, within the past year, we are looking at doing what needs to be done to bring the 169 units to the building department again. That is an option for us before May of 2022. And we will go down that path. We looked at this as an opportunity, honestly, to try and achieve the specific plan's goal for the area. We know that the 169 units was done before, and it doesn't necessarily meet the new specific plan. We saw this as an opportunity to try and meet that particular goal, both as an opportunity for San Ramon and as an opportunity for Rome to do something different. We think the project as proposed is people keep using the word hybrid. It's kind of not a condo, but it's not as much as a townhome. And maybe it opens up another opportunity for some first-time home buyers. We saw this as truly an opportunity to explore a different avenue. And if there's favorable response from the commission and agreeing with some of the items that we've put forth with regards to the net versus gross square footage issue and density, then we may pursue this. As far as the two projects go, I can't offer up 100% answer as to why the finances didn't work during the time or why they would now. But
and again, as the architect, I don't expect you to. I'm talking to Rome Corporation.
Okay.
You are going to be talking to Rome Corporation. I will say, however, that your explanation of costs is what every project goes through. At every point a development goes through. It's just interesting to me that that we had what we felt was a good project at a prime location in a master planned area, essentially, and Rome couldn't put it together. And so when you come back, please address some of the design issues that are called out in the report or in the village plan. In the vision section, the description of the VCMU and the placemaking framework. And to the extent that Rome is able and willing, anything that would give at least me some confidence that this time around they can actually make it happen.
Mhm. Well, I can address some of the vision issues that not
That's
necessarily, but that we have thought about and taken into consideration. They haven't been completely articulated at this point in time. One of our visions would be to use the creek area and the access past Windmill Farms and the easement that we have over the culvert. The walkability is coming somewhat from the access at Deerwood and San Ramon, again, with the podium level being at grade. The paseo and the walkability feeling from our standpoint would be more on the interior of the project, in between the units, and possibly down the west side of the project. And then, once Deerwood and San Ramon Valley is articulated better, I think we could show how the units themselves face Deerwood. They'd have porches, they'd have stoops. The setbacks would allow for kind of an urban brownstone feel, maybe almost with a front yard kind of feel to them. So we have thought that, we just haven't had the opportunity to articulate that further, but I will make a note of that. And if we come back, we will have that definitely addressed further.
Thank you.
Mr. Wallace, thank you for waiting. Go ahead.
No problem. Okay, so I have some questions for staff and they can flip a coin to see who gets to answer them. Page 32 of the specific plan states, quote, density is defined as the number of dwelling units per gross acre, period, close quote. Now, am I correct that the term, quote, gross acre, close quote, is not defined in the San Ramon Village specific plan?
I believe it falls to the definition in the zoning ordinance.
Okay, my question was actually, is it specifically defined in the specific plan, no pun intended?
I'd have to double check, but I don't believe so. I don't know.
I think that's correct. Okay, so the default position for the specific plan, like it is for most, if not all of our other specific plans, if it's not covered in the specific plan itself, it's covered by the zoning ordinance definition?
That's correct. I mean, the term gross is defined in other documents.
Right.
It's a common definition.
Right. The staff report states, quote, the zoning ordinance defines gross area as the total area of a lot exclusive of adjacent dedicated street right of way, period, close quote.
Right.
So I am assuming that it is staff's opinion that the term gross acre as defined in the specific plan means the same thing as gross acre as defined in the zoning ordinance.
That's correct.
All right. So if we apply that definition to this project, then isn't it true that the density of the project that is currently being proposed is much less than the 30 units per acre minimum described in the village center mixed use area, which is applicable to this project?
Much less is a subjective term, but it is most certainly less.
I think it's 24 units per acre, but I won't quibble over much or a lot. Okay, now.
Since you're cross-examining, so.
Assuming that that's the case, and that this project as currently defined does not meet the minimum standards for the village center mixed use area, to accommodate what they want to do, wouldn't there have to be an amendment to this specific plan?
My initial reaction would be yes, unless there's another mechanism, legal mechanism to do it. But at face value, it would seem that we would need to redefine the term in the specific plan.
And if we did that, wouldn't that new definition apply throughout the specific plan area?
It would.
And the practical effect of accommodating this particular project would be to lower the density of everything in the specific plan area, which would presumably concomitantly lower the amount of housing units that could be accommodated by the specific plan area.
Potentially, yes, but it would be dependent on site conditions and which properties had items that would net out.
Okay, now, last question. Am I correct that a density standard is an objective standard within the meaning of the Housing Accountability Act?
In the sense that it is a numeric standard, you are correct. And then it relies on a definition, which is straightforward as well. It's not subjective because it's defined.
So if we concluded that this project did not meet our density standards as defined by the specific plan, we would be in our rights, notwithstanding the Housing Affordability Act, to deny the application on that basis, wouldn't we?
I would argue that that is correct. I would defer to a legal argument if it came down to that, but at face value, you're correct.
Okay, all right. That's all the questions I had for staff.
Okay.
Guilty.
Very, very lawyerly. All right. Commissioner Edwards, Commissioner Alpert.
We're going to be moving to public comment at some point, right?
Well, okay.
And then
yes,
to
we are.
deliberations. Okay.
Okay. All right. Any other clarifying questions? Sorry, you're right. I lost track of this. Okay, so let us open public comment. We'll see if we have. Yes, we have a hand raised. All right, Jen, you want to give your?
So just as a reminder, I'm sure everyone here is familiar, *9 on your telephone if you'd like to speak, or the raise your hand button on your computer for this item. And it does look like we have one commenter, so I will allow you to go ahead and speak. Call in user 1.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, we can.
Okay, so first of all, I think this is a very unique location. So it can be a risk or it can be an opportunity. And I must say that I was a little bit concerned when the developer is being reminded repeatedly by the commissioners that their project needs to meet the unit demand, which I understand, but as a prospective homeowner, I'm putting myself as a public in those shoes. Doesn't mean that I will buy any of, the 3 projects that have been discussed today, but, just trying to help, put in my 2 cents as a public. I'm concerned about the safety. Then if you try to jam so many units there, and I can't help but, wanting to recommend that perhaps this area is a good area to apply Shanae's ADU creativity here again. If the commissioners are worried about the units, and the developers must, also cover their, fiduciary duty as architects and builders. Their products must be secure, must be, able to withstand nature's challenges. And this particular place, given the creek area, it has that unique challenge. So please keep that in mind. And if it's possible, I would like the staff to please go outside of the box even more and develop perhaps and try to look into ADUs perhaps in a more like tribal kind of living, dormitory concept, like shared utility space, but more like just livable areas that can be satisfied with the definition of ADU. I would highly recommend to just, play with it and to not be too rigid in any definition, or this area really should just, not put up any, should not be allowed to be built, because I really am concerned, should there be an earthquake or, with the climate change, God forbid, if there's a flood or whatever, there's a lot of risks. So please keep those challenges in mind. And thank you, developer. You sound like a decent developer. So I'm glad that Shanae was able to capture you before, he leaves. Thank you so much for working on this space. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, it looks like that was our last commenter.
Correct. All right, very good. Let us close the public comment then. Okay, now, commissioners, discussion and feedback. All right, now, Commissioner Edwards, thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to keep my comments brief, mindful of the time. I want to thank Rome Development for bringing another project forward. You were one of the first projects that I heard from during my time on the Housing Advisory Committee. And I remember being extremely impressed with the concept that you were going to be putting forward a plan that had 169 units on this corner with the affordability that you had proposed at that time. I am very disappointed that this project has not yet come to fruition. I am very disappointed that the unit count is proposed to be reduced to the extent that it has. And I will also look forward to hearing some information about what some of your challenges were in terms of getting the financing that needed to come forward. My hope is that when we see an alternate development proposal for this site, we're not going to be seeing such a dramatic reduction in the density of the unit count. It's just too important for us to be developing housing in the site with some greater amounts of density. And it's not just about the RHNA numbers. Every time we decide to approve a low density project in an area like this, we are making a choice that new housing goes in places like Lathrop, and then we complain about traffic. I want to just comment on the parking requirements. It sounds like a lot of the feasibility issues you're having with the project is the need to develop parking. And it based on my math, it looks like you're going to have to provide 2.6 parking spaces for each one of these townhomes. I'm not sure if that's a minimum. I don't know whether that is just simply what you are proposing, but I think that there's a lesson learned for our commissioners. If we are winding up with a project that isn't feasible because the amount of money that you're going to have to spend on parking is killing the project, I think we need to know and understand that, and get some additional feedback from the development community about how parking minimums are a problem for projects. You had a few specific questions. I am in favor of netting out the unbuildable areas. I think we've done that several times in recent meetings for other projects. You had a question about the architectural styles. I don't have an objection to the architectural styles, and frankly, I kind of view that as being outside of the purview of things that the Planning Commission should be getting involved with. I think that I've commented on the various things that you wanted commented on. So please let me know if there's clarification that you need.
Thank you, Commissioner Edwards. Mr. Campbell.
So,
feedback?
and we understand that the drop in 169 units to 60 units. We see that, we notice that 100%. This exercise, like I said, was intended really to show what the specific plan, the village specific plan will create with what is given there on a buildable portion of land. So, you know, if you're open to netting out the buildable area, then this is the type of density and the amount of units you would get on a buildable piece of land. The 169 unit project is an exception to that. And we understand that that's, you know, great for RENA, and it's the project that was approved. And we see the difference between the two. We looked at this as an opportunity with the new specific plan to show what can be done based on the specific plan. They are two diametrically different project types. The old one doesn't meet the specific plan at all. This one comes close if we can, you know, on a buildable area site. You know, if the acreage can't be netted out, then the site realistically becomes unbuildable from a specific plan standpoint. That's kind of what our exercise is. We're attuned to what the planning commissioners are looking for and what San Ramon is looking for. We understand that. Rome looked at this as an opportunity to provide something, as I said, based on the specific plan. And if the commission was open to it, we would pursue it. If the commission guides us in another way, we will attempt to work that direction as well. So we appreciate all comments and time.
Yeah, Chair Kuznick, may I respond to that
Go ahead.
quickly? I want to just thank you for the collaborative attitude. That particularly is appreciated after our last several hearings. It's extremely important. It demonstrates courtesy and collaboration, and it is very much appreciated.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you all.
I will second that. All right, Commissioner Wallace, you have your hand up.
You know, I'm going to make this brief. I like the idea of the units being smaller. I think 1,200 to 1,400 square feet. To me, that's a little bit closer to true affordable housing than something that's 2,200 square feet. The problem I have is this. According to you, your plan requires that the density of your project be based on a net acre basis. The specific plan calls for density to be based on a gross area basis. The only way this project can be approved under the current specific plan is you have to amend the specific plan to change the way density is calculated. And unless you're going to do spot zoning for this one area, this one parcel, that's going to have to apply across the entire area, which is a decision we made about a year ago to go the other way. So that seems to me that that's the dilemma you have and a decision you have to make. Either you pull the trigger on asking us to amend the plan, or you have to think of some way to meet the existing zoning requirements, because I don't see any way this project meets our specific plan under the current density that you've proposed.
That's why we're here tonight, to determine if we're ready to, if we need to go down that path, to ask you to pull the trigger. In all honesty, that's you know, our goal. This site is unique. Most sites probably aren't going to have, you know, close to 3/4 of an acre of unbuildable land. It's the nature of this site. So that to us, it was worth the time and a little bit of work from Dahlin Group, great work from Dahlin Group, to explore this option. And if it comes down to changing the specific plan and the language there, and you know, that becomes unfeasible or unattainable at this point in time, then, Rome's prepared to go in a different direction. Our goal here in taking all of your time tonight was to get your input and do the best that we can with that knowledge and moving forward.
No, and I understand that. I appreciate you taking the time and the effort to come up with a different plan. Although I missed 169 apartment units. And as you may know or may not know, I think we spent 2.5 years going over that permitting process. And it was a bear to do. So thank you.
Wow. Commissioner Albert, comments, feedback?
I don't think I have a whole lot else to add. I'm struggling with the loss of units like my fellow commissioners, and I'm sympathetic to the site layout as well. If I did the math, it feels like you're around 20 units short, to get the, so I didn't quite follow the math in the write-up, but we were to use the full gross acres that add that 0.6 back in,
Right.
I just wonder if there isn't a different site layout that might get us closer to the 30,
Trust me, we've tried.
I appreciate that. If you do decide to go down the specific plan amendment, I would like to make sure, and I know we don't like to use the word spot zoning, but I'm afraid I feel like we have to have a definition that doesn't allow Morgan's, who doesn't have any of the site constraints, take advantage of a lower density, because this really is the anchor. This property and the one across the street are the anchor and the entrance to the village specific plan. So with that said, first of all, there are some other questions. I have no concerns about the retail standalone as presented at horizontal mixed use. Although the specific plan encouraged vertical mixed use, I think I could, accept, the horizontal mixed use as proposed. One thing I'll just ask, and I joined the commission probably month 18 of talking about the original project. There was significant discussion at that time about whether Windmill Farms was in or out in the project. And I'm going to assume that they're out on the old project and they're still out, but it might be good to just re-explore that, make sure.
So that's a very valid question. And that is truly tied into this conversation as well tonight. If you look at, unfortunately, I didn't anticipate this question, so I don't have the exact numbers with me. But if you look at the gross to net square footage density question for the Windmill Farm site, it's even worse than our site. I think there's more unbuildable land than buildable land based on the creek setback for that particular site. So without a specific plan amendment, Windmill Farms is not a viable option for us at all. There's absolutely no reason for us to pursue that further. And that's one I can state.
No, I appreciate that. I just really, it was a huge discussion at the time.
And a specific plan change would affect Windmill Farms because it would directly impact that site as well. And it would make it more viable in the future. But I understand the commission's need. You have to analyze all the properties that would have to net out really to answer that question. So I appreciate that.
Right. And then I think you mentioned it and it didn't come through here. It appears the way the site layout is now, it's almost like we're building a wall to the 100-foot creek setback. I think there's probably some way to embrace the creek area into the site layout a little bit better. We don't need all of the back of the row of townhouses, basically closing it off. I understand that we can't build on the 100 Creek setback, but it can be parks and it can be walking paths and it can be trails. it can really be better integrated into the project. And it feels to me like it's being walled off, and I understand that you can't build on it, but you should be able to use it as part of it is your property, so to embrace it, whether it's parks or settings or paths or benches and all of that, I think my understanding is all that's allowed. And I think if you come back, that should be really highlighted, because it is a key element of the strategic plan, is embracing the creeks, streams, and trails. And then lastly, there was some requests for feedback on architecture. I'll echo what I think we said before. I think this area, more than other areas, does not really lend itself to the modern all glass flat roof steel looking of buildings. The 2 or 3 pictures that you included that were more traditional residential looking, I think would fit in better than ultra modern. I know I didn't give good feedback on the one thing that matters, but
feedback is good.
Okay, so that leaves me. And I'm going to take a slightly different approach on this. I actually think the idea that the creek setback, the gross versus the net, I would have been willing to go with the net personally, because I just think it's unbuildable and that should not count against you. However, I would like to suggest, and I'm not a land planner, I'm just a commissioner, but wonder if there might be an option to somehow dedicate that 100-foot setback to the city, and then reduce the amount of land you actually own, and then you have met the requirements for the density on what becomes the buildable lot. Don't know the mechanics of that, but that is some possibility. The other possibility to meet the density, and again, you're the architect, but I wonder if there might be an opportunity to do a combination of apartments and townhouses. That way you might be able to get, some higher density units in, where the bulk of the units then would still be for sale, townhouses. And I want to acknowledge that in the current market, and given the number of projects we've seen lately that are townhouses, right now, that I'll be crass and say that's where the money is right now. Selling units it's a good time to be selling units rather than creating rental housing. But perhaps in this particular lot, that might be a bigger box to think outside of. And I think the parking, the other third thing, again, because I like to try to be creative ideas, is we've also seen people come to this commission with ideas of shared parking. And as I'm looking at the plan page A3, there is the church, which is next door. I don't know what direction it is, but
Yes.
maybe there's an opportunity with the church that maybe some of that parking could be considered shared, and then that would help you integrate more units without being constrained by the parking limitation. So those are 3 different ideas for me.
I can briefly touch on the higher density apartment units combined with the townhomes. We did explore that opportunity from a financing and developer standpoint. That becomes problematic to marry the two with a for sale product, with a rental product, with a retail element, and getting financing for that. And if you want any affordability in that, that gets really complicated.
Okay, fair enough.
So we looked at quite a few options. We thought this was a creative solution to start this discussion with. So we appreciate all of it.
Okay. All right. Anybody else, commissioners? Okay, so it sounds like you have gotten a variety of feedback, some more pointed than others, and back to the drawing board or some version of it.
Some version of it.
Okay,
Thank you all very much for your time tonight.
thank you. We appreciate it as well.
Have a good night.
All right, you too. Thank you. Okay. All right, the commissioners, we are moving on to liaison updates and updates to the commission. I'm seeing head shake. I'll be honest, there was a transportation committee. I did not make it to the meeting. So we have no liaison reports. All right, Lauren, updates, coming
so
attractions.
December 21st, we have a joint meeting with City Council, 5 p.m. start time. We're looking at the West Side specific plan update related to the El Nido Senior Care Facility. And so that'll be the first hearing to introduce the project, discuss some of the proposed changes. And it does require the 3 hearings before each body total. So this will just be the first of many. January 4th, we are canceling that meeting on the back of the holiday. And then coming into January, we're working on a joint meeting with HAC related to some general plan questions that we'll be bringing forward as part of the general plan and housing element update. So more to come on that.
Okay, very good.
And Lauren, just to confirm, the 21st, it's just that one item. We're not anticipating a regular planning commission meeting at 7. Is that right?
No, not at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything else for the good of the order? Oh, Ms. Chamberlain.
Thank you. So just a quick update on our Planning Commission Academy coming in March. We have just added a tour of the City Center and the Citywalk to showcase what we started in 2016. I may have mentioned I was working on getting that scheduled, but we have Lauren, who's been heavily involved in Citywalk and working with with Sunset Development. We'll be doing a walking tour with 20 participants, so we will have that coming. And I will not be in attendance on the 21st, so just want to say happy holidays to the commissioners, and I will see you next year.
And to you, Debbie.
And to you too, and to everybody. Last chance.
Happy holidays.
Yay.
Happy holidays.
Thank you so much for all your efforts.
Happy retirement.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes.
And
Good luck,
someday
Sinead.
we'll all meet in person. All right, so we are adjourned at 10:53.